A brilliant comet streaks across the star-studded night sky, while below it, a bustling highway chokes with heavy traffic. A crimson motorcycle rockets forward, slicing through the air at a breathtaking velocity. On this fierce machine rides a young man, focused and determined. His jet-black hair whips wildly in the wind, a stark contrast to his lack of helmet or any protective gear. Navigating the gridlocked highway, he miraculously catches every green light, a stroke of extraordinary luck, yet he wears a frown. His frustration stems from an ironic curse, possessing the superpower of luck but feeling powerless to wield it. Speeding onward, he shuts his eyes momentarily, his mind drifting back to the morning's unfolding memories. A massive crowd gathers on the grounds of the Superhuman Academy, eagerly awaiting the entrance examination that will decide their future. On stage stand the exceptional students who excelled in the written test, ready for the next challenge. Today, their superhuman abilities will be put to the test, each candidate positioned before a glowing magical sphere. Among these top contenders is the young man, eagerly bracing himself for the trial ahead. In the audience, a striking girl with flowing black hair cheers passionately, her eyes fixed on him. The host steps forward to explain the testing rules. There are 5 tiers of superpowers: White Dust, Blue Spirit, Violet Soul, Red Royal, and the coveted Sacred Black. Only students ranked Blue Spirit or higher will be accepted, as those in the lowest White Dust tier will be excluded from recruitment. When the young man placed his hand on the ball before him, it erupted in a brilliant white glow, marking him unmistakably as a White Dust bearer. His eyes widened in stunned disbelief. As his gaze shifted toward the other students, he noticed one possessed a Violet Soul, while the remainder radiated Blue Spirits. Behind the raven-haired beauty, a blonde young man stood watching intently. Amid the crowd, he chuckled mockingly at Ming-He, ridiculing him as one of the rare few with the White Dust talent, belittling the invisibility of such a power. Frozen by shock and humiliation, Ming-He was overwhelmed as the crowd erupted in laughter and scorn directed at him. The blonde man then sneered, questioning Ming-He's audacity to confess his feelings to the school's Violet Soul beauty. The black-haired beauty lifted her eyes toward the stage, worry etched deeply in her expression. Ming-He's flashback shattered as he snapped his eyes open. Suddenly, a massive truck barreled toward him, threatening imminent impact. He deftly dodged the truck and narrowly avoided another oncoming vehicle. Despite escaping death by a hair, frustration consumed him as he cursed his power's apparent uselessness. Moments later, Ming-He could be seen journeying beyond the city limits. He traveled along a road framed by the immense skeleton of a thoracic spine, its towering arches spanning the way like a natural gateway. Looking up, Ming-He spotted a comet drawing ever nearer to his location. At first glance, it appeared to be a singular, massive comet. But on closer inspection, multiple comets trailed closely behind the giant one, following its path through the sky. Ming-He believed his incredible luck made him untouchable, even bullets would miss him, so how could a colossal comet striking the vast Earth possibly harm him? Just as that confident thought crossed his mind, a brilliant light suddenly burst forth from behind him. Turning around, Ming-He's eyes widened in shock as he caught sight of the roaring comet hurtling toward him. A deafening rumble followed instantly. Ming-He had no moment to brace himself or react. The ground convulsed violently, sending shards of debris flying as a dense cloud of dust billowed from the comet's impact site. When the dust settled, Ming-He lay motionless on the scorched earth amidst the crater's depths. Positioned directly in the crater's center, marking the epicenter of destruction, his body astonishingly remained unharmed. Suddenly, a shimmering, bubble-like essence drifted gently through the air and merged into Ming-He's chest. A game-style interface abruptly appeared, revealing Ming-He's stats. His luck attribute gleamed exceptionally high, and a message indicated this was shielding him from being consumed like a parasite by the system. Before him materialized the silhouette of a colossal woman, seemingly embodying the very essence of the system itself. Another system alert warned that a hostile entity approached, advising that coexistence with the host was the optimal strategy. The system penetrated Ming-He's hippocampus, extracting memories to identify and understand its host. Upon learning that Ming-He lacked any combat skills, the towering silhouette bestowed upon him newfound powers. Ming-He's talent rating immediately surged, ascending to the prestigious Royal Red tier. Satisfied, the silhouette concluded that with his enhanced abilities, Ming-He might now be capable of defending himself effectively. Later, at the hospital, Ming-He lay in a bed, connected to monitors and a ventilator keeping him alive. The doctor spoke quietly with a blonde nurse about Ming-He's condition, explaining that while his body remained stable, a severe head injury had caused him to fall into a prolonged coma. As the blonde nurse assured she would watch over Ming-hee, another nurse entered, calling for Dr. Zio. She informed him that Tian Wen's team had delivered a vial of the monster's blood requiring immediate examination. Dr. Zio and the nurses then left the room, leaving Ming-hee alone in quiet solitude. Several days later, a striking woman with raven black hair visited Ming-hee, carrying a fresh bouquet of flowers as a gentle gesture. She gazed at the unconscious Ming-hee, her expression heavy with concern and silent worry. A month on, a young blonde man and his companions came to see Ming-hee, their eyes cold and mocking as they regarded him. They ridiculed how Ming-hee had been frustrated by his desire to become superhuman and argued that, despite his mood, he should have prioritized his own safety. During their conversation, the blonde spotted a pink envelope tucked inside the bouquet resting on Ming-hee's bedside table while his friends grumbled about the steep medical bills his older sister had to cover by taking on extra work. Ignoring their chatter, the blonde reached for the pink envelope and carefully opened it to discover what was inside. His face contorted with fury as he read the message, a letter from the raven-haired enchantress Luke Hyun, responding to Ming-hee's heartfelt confession. Jealousy blazed in his eyes as he grappled with the unsettling realization that Ming-hee was a disabled superhuman, whose fate, whether he would ever regain consciousness, remained uncertain. The blonde regarded him with scorn. In a fit of anger, he tore the letter to pieces right then and there. Then a full year slipped quietly by. Suddenly, a colossal, cockroach-like monster emerged from a manhole, its enormous size shattering the surrounding concrete as it forcefully climbed out. The hospital's PA system crackled to life, broadcasting an urgent alert, a massive outbreak of mutant monsters in Nanchang, instructing all medical personnel to evacuate immediately. Dr. Zio and several staff members were caught off guard as nurses and patients hurried toward the exits. However, the blonde nurse caring for Ming-hee dashed resolutely in the opposite direction. Alarmed by her actions, Dr. Zio watched the nurse with concern. Just as he prepared to follow, the building trembled violently, and his colleagues urged him to evacuate at once. The blonde nurse's heart was heavy with worry for the unconscious student. As she sprinted down the corridors, she resolved that even if he never awoke, she couldn't abandon him in such peril. Pursuing Ming-hee's room, she remained unaware of the looming silhouette behind her, an ominous monster, dripping saliva from its clawed hands and lolling tongue, hanging menacingly from the ceiling. With urgency, she flung open the door to Ming-hee's room, seeking refuge. She caught sight of his grimacing face, contorted as if he were enduring intense pain. Without hesitation, she sprang toward him, gripped his hand firmly, and tried to pull him off the bed. Suddenly, something seized her attention. She glimpsed her reflection in the window, and behind her stood a massive cockroach. Frozen in terror, she was held captive by the grotesque creature. The monster began licking her face, savoring her presence as if she were a delicacy. Then, unexpectedly, the hand she was holding twisted free and landed a fierce punch on the creature behind her. Her eyes widened in shock at what she witnessed. The blow was so forceful it sent ripples through the air, like a shockwave. Ming-hee, now seated on his bed, fixed a deadly glare ahead as an ethereal mist surrounded his clenched fists. Beneath the sparkling night sky outside the hospital, swarms of cockroach monsters crawled relentlessly across its walls. Suddenly, a section of the upper wall exploded outward as if something fierce had burst through. The blast created a jagged hole through 3 layers of wall, exposing the night sky. Ming-hee faced the breach, fists clenched, while before him knelt a blonde nurse shielding her head desperately, as if her survival hinged on it. Behind her lay a cockroach monster, missing its upper half. The fallen half of the creature collapsed to the floor with a resounding thud. Ming-hee reassured the blonde nurse calmly, telling her the monster was finally defeated. He extended his hand gently toward the nurse. Then he asked her if she was able to stand. Ming-hee expressed his gratitude to the blonde nurse, Miss Song, for her devoted care during his long recovery. In return, Miss Song thanked Ming-hee for saving her life and asked him when he first regained consciousness. Ming-hee avoided answering and quickly changed the subject, inquiring if he was at Nanchang Hospital and questioning why so many monsters were present there. Miss Song explained that higher authorities at UPS had reported a contaminated fluid had leaked into the city's sewage system, infecting parasites and triggering their mutation. Curious, Ming-hee asked about the fate of the other staff members and the residents living nearby. Miss Song replied they were likely evacuating to safer areas, but since Ming-hee had been unconscious, she had felt overwhelmed and uncertain. Her voice faltered as a vivid image flashed across her mind, Ming-hee being devoured by a monster. Ming-hee smiled reassuringly, telling Miss Song she hadn't abandoned him when it mattered most. Miss Song modestly replied that she was simply fulfilling her responsibilities, then asked how Ming-hee, still just a student, had defeated the mutant with a single punch. Internally, Ming-hee reflected that he'd spent an entire year honing his combat skills, but to avoid revealing too much, he sidestepped her question again and urged they leave immediately to join the others in safety. The commotion from their earlier fight had drawn even more monsters, flooding the hallway with hostile creatures. Using the hole he had made earlier in the wall, Ming-hee stepped into the corridor and instructed Miss Song to stay inside the room for safety. The moment Ming-hee stepped out, monsters lunged at him with ferocious aggression. Adopting a swift punching stance, Ming-hee dispatched every cockroach nearby with a single, lightning-fast strike. Those cockroaches lurking at the hallway's far end froze in shock, stunned by the sight before them. With determined speed, Ming-hee charged forward, obliterating them one by one with precise punches. As he struck down the last cockroach, a piercing scream from Miss Song caught his attention. Turning around, he spotted a cockroach that had slipped through the ceiling cracks, poised menacingly to attack Miss Song. His eyes quickly spotted a bottle of sulfuric acid resting on a nearby medical cart. Ming-hee dashed over, snatched the bottle, and shattered it firmly in his grasp. Rather than spilling onto the floor, the acid coalesced into his fists, glowing with dangerous energy. Miss Song had closed her eyes, shielding her head with one hand, seemingly resigned to her grim fate until Ming-hee unleashed his acid punch against the cockroach. Tears streamed down Miss Song's face as she opened her eyes to witness the monster that threatened her dissolving before her very eyes. Ming-hee gazed at his glowing hand, reflecting on the countless hours he had spent perfecting this move in his mind. His fists radiated an eerie green luminescence, signaling the unleashed power within. Miss Song exclaimed with awe, asking whether his extraordinary ability was linked to his punches. Without directly answering, Ming-hee smiled humbly and confessed he was still a student who had failed last year's examination. Miss Song snapped back, claiming the teachers must be blind, as his abilities paled in comparison to several pyro-class superhumans. His smile faded into sorrow as he recalled the humiliating memory of being ranked as white dust during last year's exam. Ming-hee inquired about the mysterious fluid and the terrifying transformation of the cockroaches. Miss Song explained that cockroaches weren't the only creatures lurking in the city's sewers. Ming-hee nodded thoughtfully and then asked if more sulfuric acid was available, noting its usefulness. Along the mountainside roadway, where the sewers emptied into a flowing river, a bus cruised over a bridge, while beneath it loomed a massive shadow with enormous, glowing eyes. As the bus advanced across the bridge, the concrete ahead erupted violently, sending debris hurtling through the air. The passengers inside, including the driver, screamed in terror and chaos erupted. They watched in horror as a swarm of grotesque cockroach monsters crawled upward along the bridge toward them. Dr. Zio, trapped inside the bus, frantically called for backup on his phone, reporting a surge of mutant creatures attacking at Nanchang Bridge and urgently requesting superhuman intervention. Suddenly, a cockroach shattered the window and lunged at a woman sitting nearby just as a deafening bang echoed through the air. A man dressed in a rugged cowboy outfit suddenly appeared, perched atop the bus's roof. A distinctive badge hinting at superhuman status gleamed on his chest, and he gripped a rifle in each hand, both barrels still emitting smoke. The lingering smoke signaled freshly fired shots that had just felled a cockroach, now slumped lifeless against the bus window. Introducing himself as a pyro-class superhuman, he spoke with calm assurance to comfort the terrified passengers inside the bus. He unleashed a relentless barrage from his rifles, shouting defiantly at the attacking monsters that he would eliminate them all. His voice rang out, proclaiming his power, infinite bullets, no matter how many foes appeared. Amid the hail of gunfire, a cockroach managed to evade the bullets and lunged toward his foot, snapping its jaws. With agility, he leaped and spun gracefully through the air, narrowly avoiding the insect's attack. Continuing his rapid firing mid-air, he landed on the bus roof, striking a cool, confident pose. One knee bent in a dynamic stance, his expression suddenly shifted to shock as his eyes widened, sensing an enormous shadow looming ominously above him. Looking up, he was confronted by a colossal rat monster. Its massive, glittering eyes locked onto him, claws poised to strike. It bared razor-sharp teeth and screeched fiercely, spraying saliva through the air. A tremendous impact struck the bus, shattering the roof and sending debris flying through the air. Inside, passengers' faces twisted in sheer terror, eyes wide with horror at the unfolding scene. Through the jagged hole overhead, they witnessed the monstrous rat gnawing on the superhuman's body. As his badge tumbled into the bus cabin, the passengers cried out in desperate unison for help. Deep within the forest near the hospital building, the chilling events had just begun to unfold. Miss Song and Ming He crouched cautiously behind a tree. Miss Song quietly asked if any of the monsters had followed them, to which Ming He replied that, for the moment, they had not been pursued. Just as they prepared to move on, something unexpected caught Miss Song's eye. She noticed a bus engulfed in flames, resting at the far end of the shattered bridge. Miss Song speculated to Ming He that the burning vehicle was likely the final bus to depart from the hospital, implying that everyone on board was in grave danger. Suddenly, a handheld radio nearby emitted a sharp buzzing sound, immediately drawing Ming He's attention. The voice on the other end urgently reported a massive mutant rat sighted at Nanchang Bridge. The pyro-ranked twin-gun operator had lost all vital signs, and no registered superhuman was in the vicinity to assist. Ming He took the radio and requested detailed information about the giant rat. The responder revealed the creature's vulnerability to fire and inquired if Ming He was a superhuman. Ming He admitted he was merely a high school student who had failed the entrance exam for the Superhuman Academy. The voice on the radio grew frantic, cautioning Ming He harshly against underestimating the threat. It explained that the giant rat was classified as a general rank monster, rendering all conventional knowledge about rats ineffective and dangerous to rely on. Urgently, the voice urged Ming He to seek shelter immediately and preserve his life. Ignoring these warnings, Ming He resolutely moved toward the bridge, deliberately leaving the handheld radio behind. With a resolute expression, Ming He declared that the staff had cared for him throughout an entire year while he was unconscious, so he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The colossal rat monster was now tipping the bus precariously toward the edge of the bridge. Inside, terrified passengers screamed as the monstrous rat's massive eyes appeared menacingly through the rear window. Nearby, Ming He and Miss Song took cover in the bushes, watching silently as the rat toyed with its captive prey. As Ming He prepared to emerge from their hiding spot, he urged Miss Song to remain concealed. She tried to stop him, warning that he could be killed if he took such a risk. Ming He smiled gently and reasoned that when someone's life is in danger, the caregivers wouldn't simply stand idly by. He believed that those who care don't just watch helplessly. Without hesitation, he leapt from the bushes, charging at the giant rat with the conviction that he couldn't defeat the monster unless he tried. As the rat bit fiercely at the bus's rear, Ming He's powerful punch struck its face, forcing it to release its grip and stagger back. While battling the monstrous rat, Ming He pondered how such creatures had grown to enormous sizes. He also feared that a single hit could shatter his bones, rendering him incapable of continuing the fight. The giant rat unleashed a furious barrage of attacks, smashing roads and cars, sending debris flying through the air. Ming He deftly dodged each onslaught, aware that rats are incredibly agile and determined not to let a single strike land. He sprinted toward a cluster of abandoned vehicles on the road, aiming to lure the giant rat away from the bus. The enormous rat lunged to bite Ming He, but instead it clamped down on a nearby car with a deafening crunch. Seizing the opportunity, Ming He unleashed a devastating punch straight into the rat's side. The force of the blow was so intense it generated a powerful gust, resembling a shockwave rippling through the air. When the dust and debris finally settled, the towering rat lay sprawled across the shattered concrete roadway. As the giant rat appeared unconscious, Ming He approached boldly, swinging his arms wide, ready to deliver the final strike. Suddenly he froze mid-step, struck by a sudden realization. He recalled that cunning creatures like rats often pretend to be lifeless to deceive their foes. Without warning, the rat's eyes snapped open and it lunged at Ming He, who swiftly dodged while the creature bit a car in half instead. Ming He sprinted between vehicles as the giant rat chased him relentlessly, smashing obstacles aside and sending cars flying in its wake. Now cornered, Ming He realized that his punches lacked the power needed to put down the monstrous rat. His eyes caught a tipped-over car leaking gasoline, sparking a new idea. He darted from car to car, quickly opening their gas tanks in a calculated move. Drawing the giant rat's attacks toward the fuel-filled vehicles, he skillfully baited it to strike each one. This exhausting cat-and-mouse game dragged on until the giant rat's movements grew sluggish and weary. Panting heavily and drooling, the beast fixed a fierce glare on Ming He, clearly drained but still dangerous. From a safe distance, Ming He held up a lighter, ready to spark the gasoline and end the confrontation. Meanwhile, Miss Song emerged from her hiding spot in the bushes and hurried toward the bus to check on Dr. Lin Zio and the others. Dr. Zio was both astonished and relieved when Miss Song managed to escape the hospital. As he questioned whether his eyes deceived him, was the superhuman who saved them really dressed in a hospital uniform, a thunderous explosion interrupted their conversation. Vehicles surrounding the battleground where Ming-He clashed with the enormous rat suddenly erupted into flames. The entire vicinity was engulfed in flames, and terror unmistakably flickered across the giant rat's face. Ming-He's fist hovered amid the blaze, pulling the fire into himself as he prepared for his next move. Summoning every ounce of strength, he unleashed a fiery punch against the giant rat, a signature attack he named the Blazing Punch. His fierce strike cleared a path ahead, but the ground smoldered intensely where the flames had scorched it. The hospital staff erupted in cheers upon witnessing the giant rat's defeat. It soon became clear that the rescuer was clad in their hospital uniform. One staff member even recognized him as a student who had been in a coma for an entire year. Miss Song then informed the staff that his name was Ming-He. He was the student who had not been accepted by the Superhuman Academy. Meanwhile, at the Superhuman Command Station, a blonde superhuman communicated with Luke Hyun through the device around her neck, reporting that the general rank mutant monster had been eliminated. Luke Hyun, pausing on a tree branch, felt relief knowing the people were safe and was eager to discover who had slain the general rank mutant, intent on expressing her gratitude in person. The blonde superhuman didn't recognize who had rushed over a powerful figure, though certainly not the rude student she knew. Turning to Luke Hyun, she asked whether he had identified the pollution source. After a brief silence, Luke Hyun revealed that even more mutant creatures were likely to emerge in the near future. Their only option now was to evacuate every resident from Nanchang. Additionally, all contaminated zones needed to be completely sealed off. At the rescue center beside the gatekeeper who stood watch, Miss Song was carefully tending to bruises on Ming-He's hands. She commended his bravery, insisting that without his efforts, none of them would have survived. Ming-He averted his gaze, trying to conceal the flush of embarrassment coloring his face. Nearby, a young woman with flowing black hair was causing a stir as she attempted to breach the contaminated zone, only to be halted by the guard. The guard tried to reassure her that the area had already been completely evacuated, but she refused to listen, insisting her younger brother was still inside and she had to rescue him. Overwhelmed with emotion, she begged the guard, explaining how pitiful her brother was, a teenage boy trapped unconscious in a hospital who hadn't awakened. As she cried, pouring out her heartbreaking story, Ming-He, seated just a step away from the commotion, observed the woman with an amused expression. Tears streamed down the girl's face as she revealed her brother's name was Ming-He. Through sobs, she confided to the guard her disbelief that someone so young who hadn't even experienced holding a woman's hand would endure such a cruel fate. Gathering her resolve, she stared into the distance and vowed with unwavering determination that she would rescue him at any cost, even if it meant sacrificing her own life. And if he were to perish, she would not hesitate to follow him into death. Ming-He's jaw dropped as he stared at his sister, a mix of shock and embarrassment flooding his expression. Rising to his feet, Ming-He glanced sideways at his sister, curiosity and confusion evident in his eyes. For a brief moment, his sister was frozen in stunned silence, processing everything she had just heard. Then, overcome with emotion, she leapt into his arms and embraced him tightly as reality sank in. Overflowing with joy at Ming-He's awakening, relieved from the anxiety that had plagued her, she held him close, while he could only stare, overwhelmed by her tender response. As her sobs continued, Ming-He's face darkened with melancholy, memories surfacing of the struggles his sister had endured throughout the past year. Despite hardship, she had tirelessly cared for him, juggling multiple jobs to cover the mounting hospital expenses. He returned the embrace, filled with regret for the fright he caused and profound gratitude for her unwavering dedication during his ordeal. Later, inside a weather department building, Ming-He awoke sporting a fresh haircut and dressed in his own clothes, no longer confined to hospital attire. As he remarked on how long it had been since he'd slept under his own roof, his gaze fell upon a meal and a heartfelt letter from his sister, placed thoughtfully on the bedside table. The letter explained that his sister had returned to work because the medical bills remained unpaid, so she couldn't be by his side constantly. He was instructed to rest and recover at home. Ming-He was shocked by how expensive the hospitalization and care costs had become over just 1 year, including the surprisingly high price of his haircut the day before. He was overwhelmed with guilt, knowing his sister was working 3 jobs to support him. All that effort was just for him, yet she appeared even paler than he did, despite him being the one who had been sick. Determined to ease his sister's burden, he resolved to find a way to earn money and improve her life. As Ming-He mulled over these thoughts, the television suddenly broadcasted a reward announcement for anyone who could provide information about the origin of the contaminated fluid. He sprang up, grabbed the remote, and exclaimed, "This is it." Additional rewards were also promised to those who eliminated the monsters terrorizing the area. Astounded that the problem remained unresolved, yet generous rewards were already being offered for any intel on the pollution source, he realized that with the money, he could not only settle all his medical debts but even afford a brand new home. What's more, the leftover funds could buy plenty of clothes and makeup to spoil his sister with. He began strategizing where the polluted fluid might originate, deciding his focus should shift to investigating Nanchang Hospital rather than the entire Nanchang district. He needs to venture inside to investigate. Even if he uncovers no clues, he can still earn rewards by eliminating the mutated monsters. This approach not only rids the area of threats and protects the community, but also allows him to gain valuable combat experience. Shortly afterward, Ming-He entered the bounty hall. A receptionist warmly welcomed him and inquired whether he was there to post a bounty or if he identified as a superhuman. Ming-He replied that he was a superhuman. The receptionist then asked about his rank to assign an appropriate bounty mission, but Ming-He sidestepped the question and instead asked what rank was required to take on mutated cockroach hunts for bounty rewards. The receptionist explained that there were minimal prerequisites. As long as he could demonstrate some basic superpowers, they would grant him an intern superhuman badge. However, if he aimed to earn an official rank and attain starlight status, he would need to pass a far more rigorous examination. He agreed to the terms and requested to be escorted to the training facility. Inside the training area, numerous individuals were engaged in one-on-one combat exercises against robotic opponents. The receptionist then asked Ming-He to describe the nature of his superpower. He told her that his punch was the one in question. Then she guided Ming-He over to one of the robots, explaining that it would be used to evaluate his strength. She pointed out that the robot was built to withstand powerful hits, so Ming-He could strike it with maximum force. She added that the robot would then display a numerical value indicating the strength of his punches. Ming-He fixed his gaze on the screen attached to the robot's face. The screen showed a range from 0 to 1,200, and right beneath it displayed a significant figure, 800 kilograms. Unsure whether his punches could meet the 800-kilogram benchmark, he hesitated. Still, he resolved to give it everything he had, knowing his muscles hadn't fully recovered from being unconscious for an entire year. His expression hardened with focus as he faced the robot seriously, shifting smoothly into a fighting stance. With fierce determination, he unleashed a punch against the robot, his fists seeming to ignite from the sheer force. The power of the strike stunned everyone in the room. Even the receptionist turned to look toward Ming-He in astonishment. The robot's chest plate was violently dislodged, crashing to the floor with a deafening clang. The display on the robot now registered a new value, 1,000 kilograms. Despite this impressive number, Ming-He felt a twinge of disappointment. It was just barely above the required standard. The other test participants erupted in shouts of disbelief, baffled by Ming-He's modest reaction, especially since he had just shattered the previous record. The receptionist clarified that the 800 kilograms was the erstwhile record held by Iron Fist, a newcomer who had only recently set that mark, and that Ming-He had now surpassed it. Ming-He coyly scratched the back of his head, realizing how he had misinterpreted the number displayed on the screen earlier. Inside the bustling reception hall, the receptionist presented Ming-He with a 1,000 yuan shopping card as a modest reward for smashing the record. She informed him that achieving more records during rank examinations would earn him even greater prizes. Ming-He inquired about the various ranks available, and the receptionist explained that they currently manage ranks such as Starlight, Moonglow, Sunblaze, and Heaven Flare, adding that anyone with a higher rank would need to seek assistance elsewhere. As he gazed thoughtfully at the shopping card in his hand, Ming-He pondered deeply. A smile spread across his face as he recalled rumors claiming that reaching the Heaven Flare rank could earn you a luxury villa and an expensive car. Though uncertain of the truth behind the stories, he resolved to focus solely on strengthening himself and impressing everyone around him. Later, Ming-He arrived at the gathering place to claim the bounty and was surprised by the large crowd drawn to the event. Overwhelmed by the number of superhumans assembled, he wondered if they were all waiting for additional team members to arrive. Liu Kai-Kian, bearing the Moon Glow rank, approached Ming-He and asked if he was alone and interested in joining the Crimson Eagles. Ming-He replied by asking if everyone present was there to recruit more group members. Liu Kai-Kian explained that the sole purpose of waiting was to gather more members because the mission was perilous, and officials prohibit ability users below the Sun Blaze rank from venturing out alone. He agreed to join but requested to know the person's rank first and asked to see the badge. Ming-He displayed his badge confidently. Liu Kai-Kian immediately recognized that he was a Starlight rank intern and informed Ming-He that their team didn't accept newcomers at that level. He warned that it would be suicidal for a Starlight intern to enter and advised Ming-He to return and gain more training first. Ming-He wondered if his low rank was the reason no one wanted to team up with him, when Lin Yaoyu, a former classmate, spotted him. She asked her group members who also knew Ming-He from school to confirm his identity. They took a look and verified it was indeed him. Zheng grinned smugly as he recounted how the other group had shunned Ming-He. Lin Yaoyu then called out to Ming-He. Noticing it was Lin Yaoyu, he approached her. She inquired when he had been discharged and mentioned hearing he had been in a coma. He replied that it had been some time. Meanwhile, Lu Xinghong questioned Ming-He's reasons for coming there. He explained that he needed to earn money quickly to cover his medical expenses, so he decided to hunt mutant monsters. Zheng mocked Ming-He's frail build, suggesting he should focus on avoiding becoming prey to the mutants instead. Lin Yaoyu advised Ming-He to join their group since the area was extremely dangerous and his lack of combat skills made it too risky for him to venture alone. Zheng continued to taunt Ming-He, claiming his only talent was luck, which was better suited for winning the lottery than facing combat. Lin Yaoyu intercepted Zheng, reminding him that Ming-He was an old classmate deserving their support to overcome his challenges. Lin Yaoyu invited Ming-He to join their group, assuring him they would stand by his side and protect him. Ming-He reflected that he had no choice since the officials forbade him from traveling alone. They still looked down on him as before, even though they had been at the Superhuman Institute for over a year. To them, his former classmates had surely grown stronger, but in Ming-He's eyes, he remained the same unfortunate outcast who had been paralyzed for a year. Lu Xinghong suggested treating Ming-He as a lucky mascot since his power was fortune itself. Wang Xiao agreed, insisting they bring Ming-He along out of respect for their shared past, and Lin Yaoyu concurred, emphasizing that classmates should always support one another. She explained to Ming-He that the institute required every student to participate in at least one extracurricular activity. They were considering returning during the summer to help manage the pollution crisis together. Curious, Ming-He asked Lin Yaoyu about Liu Kai-Kian's whereabouts and wondered why she wasn't accompanying the group. Walking ahead, Zheng glanced back and jeered at Ming-He for still fixating on Liu Kai-Kian, taunting him that she had become a celebrated figure at the institute and would never associate with former classmates of such low status. Lin Yaoyu informed Ming-He that Liu Kai-Kian possessed extraordinary abilities, so swift that they couldn't keep pace. She had also heard that Liu Kai-Kian had returned to Lanyang City to assist the authorities in locating the pollution's origin. Recalling that Ming-He scored perfectly in humanities, she sought his perspective on what might be causing the pollution. As their group moved along, glowing eyes suddenly appeared, staring at them from within the street's darkened sewer. Zheng spoke up once more, declaring that flawless academic scores meant little without combat skills, precisely why Ming-He had not gained acceptance into the institute. He then remarked that their current mission was merely pest control, hunting cockroaches, and insisted that students like them were unfit for complex tasks such as tracing the pollution source. Suddenly, he paused to reflect on a report mentioning 3 distinct types of mutated creatures cited recently. These included mutant cockroaches, mutant maggots, and enormous mutant rats. Observing that these creatures were all sewer-dwelling parasites, he hypothesized that a contaminant, likely a liquid, had leaked into the sewer system, transforming the area into a breeding ground for mutated organisms. He assessed the threat level of the mutants and concluded that the giant mutant rats posed the greatest danger, while the cockroaches were relatively manageable. He further speculated that mutant maggots should be weaker than the mutated cockroaches, making them comparatively easier adversaries. Lost in deep thought, he was abruptly snapped back to reality when a massive, hand-like figure suddenly emerged before him. He realized that the mass was composed of mutated maggots. A huge wave of maggots surged forward, engulfing cars and everything else in its path. Lin Yaoyu shouted urgently for everyone to flee immediately. Ming He suddenly understood that maggots were subterranean parasites living and feeding communally. He warned a frantic sprint. They all bolted toward the building fortified with reinforced glass doors. Ming He urgently asked Wang Xiao about Lin Yaoyu's whereabouts. Wang Xiao looked guilty before admitting that Lin Yaoyu had tripped and fallen. Ming He spun around in alarm, demanding why Wang Xiao hadn't helped her and urged the group to assist Lin Yaoyu. The entire group was gripped by confusion and fear simultaneously. Then Ming He dashed toward Lin Yaoyu, who shouted for him not to come or he would be killed. He reminded her that she was the one who insisted classmates should always support each other. Spotting a fire hydrant nearby, he immediately reached for it. Water burst forth from the open fire hydrant. Just as the maggots were about to engulf him, Ming He clenched his fists, stirring the water into a swirling vortex. He unleashed an explosive wave punch that blasted the mutant maggots away. Though he couldn't eliminate the maggots completely, he successfully halted their advance. He reached out to Lin Yaoyu, asking if she was okay while offering his support. Accepting his help, she pondered his formidable strength and whether he truly was Ming He. Leaning on Ming He's shoulder, Lin Yaoyu realized for the first time how handsome he actually was. Chance to rescue a damsel in distress, prompting Wang Xiao to ask if the mutant maggots had retreated back to the sewer. He instructed them to treat Lin Yaoyu's wounds immediately, warning that the mutant maggots' secretions might be corrosive and require medicated ointment. Lin Yaoyu assured them her injury was merely a minor bruise and unlikely to affect her mobility. Hearing this, Ming He felt relieved and urged the others to look after her carefully. Meanwhile, he set out to inspect the building, determined to block any mutant maggots from infiltrating. Wang Xiao reprimanded Lu Xinghong for neglecting the building inspection and praised the vigilance of Ming He, who had been rejected by the Superhuman Institute. Both men shared an uneasy laugh, their discomfort barely masked. Ming He studied the architectural blueprint of the building intently. He then proceeded into the laboratory room, stepping carefully inside. The very first thing to catch his eye was Vivarium number 1, home to vibrant yellow butterflies. He continued making his way through a series of vivariums, observing each one closely. Eventually, he arrived at Vivarium number 9, where shattered glass and a strange leak signaled trouble. A nearby notice explained that insects from the 9th vivarium went missing on December 30th, 2030. The area was secured and remains under investigation. He felt some relief knowing the vivarium had been empty for over 6 months. He pondered whether the pollution might have caused mutations in domesticated insects, but quickly dismissed the idea, recalling that most mutants stem from the sewer system. As he moved on, he inadvertently stepped on a discarded sheet of paper, which appeared to detail the species originally housed in Vivarium number 9. The paper featured an illustration of a centipede alongside a description. Lion poo pattern centipedes are colossal predators native to southern Peru, recognized as the largest predatory centipede species, notable for their massive jaws and exceptionally long antennae. Ming He confirmed that the back door was securely locked. He reasoned that mutant maggots couldn't have entered, given the absence of other exits and the sealed-off sewer system. His breath caught in shock when he suddenly spotted Dr. Xiao standing outside the building. He couldn't help but question why Dr. Xiao would be wandering alone in such a remote area. Observing Dr. Xiao heading toward a dilapidated building, he assumed that was his residence, and worried about the dangers of him being there solo since he's far from invincible. Suddenly, Ming He's phone buzzed. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. He picked up and greeted the caller with a simple hello. It turned out to be Nurse Song on the other end of the line. She inquired about his whereabouts and invited him to join her for dinner, wanting to properly express gratitude for saving her life. Nurse Song insisted Ming He not decline her invitation and told him to call her Big Sis, explaining that her surname was Song and her given name was Lan, so Sister Song or Sister Lan would be appropriate. Ming He informed Nurse Song that he was currently deep within a secluded area. Alarmed, Nurse Song immediately questioned why he was there, reminding him that the zone was meant to be strictly off-limits due to the numerous mutants lurking beyond those they had previously encountered. Ming He explained his motivation. He aimed to earn money to ease his sister's financial struggles. Curious, Nurse Song asked whether they shared a biological connection. He clarified that although they weren't related by blood, they had been raised together in an orphanage. Recognizing this, Nurse Song acknowledged that the bond between Ming-hee and his sister transcended typical family ties. As their conversation continued, Nurse Song began undressing to take a shower, wistfully wishing she had a little brother like Ming-hee, kind-hearted, understanding, and genuinely endearing. She expressed her disappointment to Ming-hee, saying since he's currently busy with work, they should postpone their meeting. She lamented that she had even put extra effort into dressing up for the occasion. Ming-hee informed Lan Song that he had spotted Dr. Xiao wandering alone in a secluded part of the area, which was extremely risky. She exclaimed in surprise, asking Ming-hee if he was certain it was Dr. Xiao and questioned what could possibly have brought him there. He clarified that Dr. Xiao hadn't noticed him, suggesting that the window might be opaque from the outside, hiding him from view. Having finished showering and dressing, she confided in Ming-hee that Dr. Xiao had been acting strangely over the past year. Once known for his dedication, he now often left early and occasionally made mistakes during surgeries. She went on to explain that Dr. Xiao appeared exhausted, as if he hadn't slept at all. One day, the headquarters sent him a sample of Calamity Beast blood for purification, but he ended up losing it. Ming-hee was taken aback by the mention of the Calamity Beast blood and recalled lessons from his previous class, where his teacher explained that once this special blood is exposed to oxygen outside the body, it triggers dangerous mutations in the air. He remembered that certain Calamity Beast blood can incubate for up to a year and wondered if this was causing the mutations. Curious, he asked her when Dr. Xiao had lost the sample. She replied that the blood had gone missing about a year ago and suddenly realized that the incident happened on the very day Ming-hee had arrived at the hospital. He explained to her that the Calamity Beast's blood is very likely the source of the pollution, and the timeline perfectly aligns with the mutation's incubation period. Ming-hee suspected that Dr. Xiao had been dishonest, and feeling confident in his own hypotheses, he strongly believed he was correct. It now made sense to Lan Song why Dr. Xiao had ventured alone into the remote area. She suspected he recognized his errors and was returning to recover the contaminated blood. He was probably terrified of facing responsibility for what had happened. He warned Lan Song that the situation was perilous, emphasizing that Dr. Xiao, being human and not superhuman, was likely to encounter severely mutated creatures near the pollution's epicenter. He advised her that this was a serious issue and urged her to alert the authorities immediately so they could investigate the compromised building. He believed Dr. Xiao had underestimated the threat and was determined to intervene. She consented to his proposed course of action without hesitation. He reassured her that his goal was solely to stop Dr. Xiao and that he had no intention of entering the heart of the polluted zone. He returned to his teammates and informed them that the building was secure, with all entrances firmly sealed to prevent any maggots from infiltrating. He told them they could rest there safely, but explained he had urgent matters to attend to and promised he would return shortly before heading outside immediately. She asked Ming-hee where he intended to go, cautioning him that it was dangerous to venture outside alone. However, the door was already closed and locked. Outside, Ming-hee observed countless motionless maggots scattered across the street and began to form theories about their condition. The mutated maggots will be incapacitated for some time, incapable of causing any harm. He took a shortcut to intercept Dr. Xiao immediately, but 3 cockroaches suddenly ambushed him in the alley. He swiftly defeated the cockroaches and pressed onward without hesitation. Soon after, he spotted Dr. Xiao preparing to enter the building. Choosing to stay hidden, he decided to observe quietly. As Dr. Xiao stepped inside the building, Ming-hee silently followed close behind. Inside, he was stunned to find a massive hole gouged into the floor, but Dr. Xiao was nowhere in sight. His eyes caught sight of a ladder descending into the depths of the hole. He surmised that Dr. Xiao must have climbed down. Without hesitation, he plunged into the hole, pondering Dr. Xiao's true intentions, suspecting there was more complexity than met the eye. He landed in a chamber encircled by numerous pipelines lining the walls. He then spotted Dr. Xiao entering the area housing the Lan Yang water supply tank. The tank featured an attached ladder, and Dr. Xiao began to ascend. He revealed himself and confronted Dr. Xiao, demanding to know what he was up to. Dr. Xiao was visibly startled to see Ming-hee. Ming-hee questioned Dr. Xiao about whether he had truly purified the Calamity Beast's blood from the incident a year ago, leaving Dr. Xiao shocked that Ming-hee was aware of it. Ming-He pressed Dr. Zio for a clear explanation. Trembling, Dr. Zio confessed to a severe mistake, explaining that initially he was unaware and did not deliberately withhold the truth, insisting it was unintentional. He climbed down the ladder and approached Ming-He, asserting that as a doctor, his foremost duty was to save lives. He was unaware that his carelessness would trigger mutations in the organisms. He had simply come to investigate possible water contamination caused by the blood spilled nearby. He stressed his deep desire to make things right. Junpei told Dr. Zio that he was not invincible and should have reported the incident to the authorities instead. Dr. Zio dropped to his knees, pleading with Junpei for help since he possessed superhuman abilities. He had witnessed Junpei's immense strength during the hospital assault. Dr. Zio confessed that if the officials discovered the truth, he could face imprisonment. He feared that no one would be there to support his family if that were to happen. Junpei urged Dr. Zio to compose himself, warning that his abilities had limits and attempting more would be tantamount to courting death. Reluctantly allowing the mutation to persist, Dr. Zio agreed. Junpei extended a hand, proposing that they go together to report the matter to the authorities and let them manage the situation. Hearing Junpei's supportive suggestion, Dr. Zio felt relieved and inquired if Junpei had kept the matter confidential so far. Junpei confirmed his silence and advised Dr. Zio to personally disclose all details to the officials. He questioned Dr. Zio about whether he had truly lost blood there and if that was the pollution source. Dr. Zio verified the blood loss but admitted he wasn't the one who hemorrhaged, clarifying that he was merely a student. He confessed there were many aspects he still couldn't grasp. Junpei silently suspected that there was something suspicious about Dr. Zio. But he feels trapped, uncertain about what unpredictable experiments Dr. Zio might conduct there. He confessed to Dr. Zio that he couldn't grasp the meaning behind his words. Dr. Zio began to elaborate. Cockroaches, maggots, and rats lurk in the city's shadows, breeding germs and spreading diseases, provoking humanity's relentless urge to exterminate them. Ming-He nodded in agreement, though he remained puzzled by Dr. Zio's underlying message. Dr. Zio challenged him to consider how humans recklessly multiply, exploit resources, and generate endless industrial and chemical pollution, further devastating the planet's environment. To the extent that waste is now being launched into outer space, revealing that human actions mirror those of cockroaches, maggots, and rats. Ming-He concurred, acknowledging the urgent need to safeguard the environment. Dr. Zio asserted that, from a cosmic perspective, the very emergence of life is a flaw. Life should not exist at all. A lifeless universe is sublime and tranquil, but once life emerges, it acts like a bacterial infection invading a perfectly healthy organism. Humans reign as the ultimate germs akin to cancer cells, notorious for their relentless and unchecked division. They obliterate healthy cells as they reproduce endlessly across generations, ceaselessly ravaging the world. Humans relentlessly yearn to leave Earth and dominate the solar system, harboring aspirations to possess the Milky Way. Yet, wherever humanity spreads, true beauty and tranquility remain elusive. After concluding his sermon, Dr. Zio posed a question to Ming-He. Was there any fundamental difference between cancer cells and human beings? Ming-He responded by admitting that he couldn't fully comprehend the meaning behind Dr. Zio's words, considering himself merely a student and perceiving the doctor's statements as antagonistic toward humanity. Dr. Zio elaborated, explaining that when a human falls ill, their immune system works to eradicate the invading pathogens. He proposed that the universe itself is afflicted with a sickness and anticipates generating a force intended to eliminate the human species, theorizing that natural calamities, such as beasts, disasters, and catastrophes, are manifestations of the universe's immune response, designed to eradicate humanity entirely. Ming-He perceived Dr. Zio's words as profoundly bizarre and indicative of madness, telling him that his ideas exceeded the bounds of their current discussion. He reminded the doctor that their focus was on how pollution, stemming from his own mistakes, caused mutations in organisms that led to numerous deaths. At that moment, Dr. Zio removed his glasses deliberately. He declared that as a doctor treats the sick, so too does he see himself as a healer for the universe. He boldly claimed the title of Doctor of the Universe. His mission, he explained, was to help the universe eradicate humans who proliferate and spread like cancer cells. In his view, cockroaches, rats, and maggots were far less destructive than humans. After delivering this unsettling declaration, he fell silent, speechless. Dr. Zio confessed that the source of pollution originated from a seemingly harmless experiment. His plan was to first annihilate the residents of Lanyang City and then extend his devastation to all major metropolitan areas. He believed that the earth needed cleansing and that humanity itself was destined for extinction. Regarding Ming-He, he sarcastically thanked him for his ignorance and gullibility, seeing it as an advantage for his scheme. He felt triumphant, confident that he could proceed unimpeded in contaminating the entire city. Ming-He informed Dr. Zio that the southern suburbs had been sealed off and placed under strict quarantine to prevent the mutation outbreak from spreading further. Dr. Zio chuckled and asked Ming-He whether they had the capability to shut down the main water pipelines, since the city's entire water supply flowed through them. By contaminating the water supply, the mutation source could infiltrate every corner of Lanyang City. The city's inhabitants relied heavily on tap water for everything from cleaning groceries to bathing and maintaining the streets. All of this water eventually drained into the city's sewage system. Subsequently, all the maggots, cockroaches, and rats within the city would undergo mutations. Ming-He found Dr. Zio's plans horrific and resolved to intervene. Knowing that Dr. Zio lacked superhuman strength, he felt confident he could stop him. Ming-He told Dr. Zio that he couldn't comprehend his twisted rationale and urged him to carry on with his work alone as he prepared to leave. Dr. Zio was taken aback by Ming-He's decision not to obstruct him. He had assumed that Ming-He's hospital work reflected a heroic commitment to save lives and protect the city. As he turned to leave, Ming-He retorted sharply that the man was cowardly, just a worthless reject who had failed to gain entry into the Superhuman Institute and was utterly unfit to be a hero. Dr. Zio commended Ming-He for his wisdom in not interfering, then revealed that all he needed was to pour the blood into the tank to complete his plan, warning that even if the authorities arrived, it would already be too late. Just as Dr. Zio reached to retrieve the blood vial from his lab coat pocket, he suddenly realized it was missing. He recalled that Ming-He had casually touched his chest during their conversation. Fury overtook Dr. Zio, triggering a fierce transformation. With a growl, he demanded that Ming-He return the stolen blood immediately. Ming-He wondered if the doctor's metamorphosis was a result of his own extraordinary powers. He soon realized that Dr. Zio had subjected himself to experimental mutation procedures. His eyes caught a pronounced bulge protruding from the doctor's right shoulder. Dr. Zio grasped the swelling, tore it free from his shoulder, and hurled it straight at Ming-He. The mass from his shoulder instantly morphed into 4 small, quadrupedal creatures. Each beast sported razor-sharp legs, with one front limb sharpened like a deadly blade. As Ming-He reached out to grip the ladder, anticipating escape, one of the beasts swiftly slashed, severing the ladder beneath him. Immediately, the 4 creatures closed in, encircling him with hostile intent. The beasts lunged forward, but Ming-He stepped firmly on them, using their bodies as leverage to propel himself out of the pit. Landing beside the hole, Ming-He noticed exposed concrete and swiftly employed his mystic punch ability to extract elemental forces, sealing the opening entirely. Just as the beast prepared to leap through the opening, it was abruptly halted, crashing headfirst against the unforgiving concrete. Dr. Zio could detect the Calamity Beast's blood scent lingering in the air, as his own body was infused with it. He believed that Ming-He stood no chance of escaping his pursuit. Ming-He dashed swiftly down a narrow alleyway. He reflected that even a giant mutant rat possessed formidable strength, so a mutated adult male would undoubtedly be far more powerful. He concluded he was no match for the mutated Dr. Zio's overwhelming power. Avoiding his own group's direction, Ming-He knew that if mutated Dr. Zio caught up, they would all be annihilated given their current condition. Opting to stall until the authorities arrived to reclaim the Calamity Beast's blood, he placed his trust in Nurse Song's assistance. A maggot twitched and Moonglow ranked Huang Feng stepped on it, declaring the extermination complete. To the west of the abandoned structure, Moonglow ranked Zio ran, clutching a knife, sat atop the lifeless body of a mutated cockroach, crushing its severed head beneath his foot as he announced their area was cleared. Moonglow ranked Liao Zio Jiang suggested they should retreat, revealing that he had just depleted his magical energy. Liu Kai Kaiyan summoned his puppets back, pleased by the substantial bounty he had earned. Their healer inquired if stronger monsters were present, when suddenly the metal plate beneath him began to glow mysteriously. With a sudden force, the metal plate and the healer were violently thrown aside. Zio Ran acted swiftly, rescuing the healer from harm's way. A grotesquely mutated Dr. Zio emerged abruptly from the crevice. Huang Feng assumed the newcomer was Linder, the healer. Liao Xiaojiang urged the group to swiftly eliminate the mutated Dr. Xiao before seeking a safe place to rest. Liu Kai's eyes lit up at the sight of the massive monster. He quickly calculated they might earn 100,000 by killing it, even breaking down each person's share, finding it far easier than battling maggots. Huang Feng spat at Dr. Xiao, branding him a vile monster, and declared him unfortunate to have crossed paths with a group of Moon Glow-ranked superhumans. Mutated Dr. Xiao muttered grimly that the only cure was to annihilate them all. Without hesitation, he snatched Huang Feng with his monstrous right hand. Using his ability, Huang Feng stepped back swiftly, mocking Dr. Xiao for his sluggish speed. But as Dr. Xiao's arms suddenly lunged forward, cold sweat broke out across Huang Feng's face in an instant. Mutated Dr. Xiao clamped his grasp tightly around Huang Feng's neck, hoisting him effortlessly. Raising his left arm, spikes erupted violently from it, puncturing Huang Feng deeply. Mutated Dr. Xiao counted off coldly. 1. Xiao Ran's fury blazed fiercely. She slashed furiously at mutated Dr. Xiao, demanding he release Huang Feng at once. Witnessing Dr. Xiao's wound sealed rapidly, she attacked again, hurling insults about his grotesque and repugnant form. As Xiao Ran closed in on mutated Dr. Xiao, he retaliated with a lethal swipe of his left hand, slashing across her chest. Xiao Ran lay motionless on the floor as mutated Dr. Xiao casually tossed Huang Fei's body beside hers and counted out 2. Then, with a sinister grin, he turned to the rest of the group, tauntingly asking if they felt pleased that their teammates had died after all. Now they could claim a larger share of the reward. The remaining group members were visibly terrified, beads of sweat pouring down their faces as dread overwhelmed them. Mutated Dr. Xiao licked his lips with a predatory hunger. From the gaping hole in mutated Dr. Xiao's body emerged 4 fearsome mutated beasts. With a mocking tone, mutated Dr. Xiao lamented that he was pressed for time, otherwise he would have delighted in prolonging his torment of them. One of the smaller beasts caught a scent and immediately bolted decisively in a specific direction. Mutated Dr. Xiao hurried after the 4 small creatures, his excitement mounting as he realized he was closing in on Liao Minghe's location, already envisioning how he would tear him apart. The quartet of mutated beasts, led by mutated Dr. Xiao, sprinted relentlessly toward where Liao Minghe was, the doctor's anticipation boiling over at the thought of ripping him to shreds. At the same time, Liao Xiaojiang clutched Xiao Ran's lifeless body tightly, both of them trembling and overcome with sorrow. The encounter had shaken them deeply. After confronting the monstrous beast, Liu Kaiyan questioned Liao Xiaojiang about the terrifying creature's identity. He deduced it was likely a Lord-ranked monster. Both felt an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude to have survived such a harrowing ordeal. Meanwhile, Minghe sprinted through the twisting streets, suddenly realizing that 4 mutated beasts were relentlessly chasing him, despite his earlier certainty that he had lost them. The beasts expertly navigated the maze like alleys, and Minghe suspected they were tracking his scent to stay on his trail. Relieved that mutated Dr. Xiao was slower than the pursuing creatures, Minghe identified the 4 beasts detached from Xiao's form as lymphoma beasts. Driven now by urgency, Minghe resolved to stop mutated Dr. Xiao from capturing his blood at any cost. While fleeing, he sprinted toward the door but paused, realizing the 4th beast probably possessed a keen sense of smell that would quickly track him down again. Knowing the 4th beast was isolated from the other 3, Minghe decided to seize the moment and eliminate it instead of endlessly fleeing. The 4th beast successfully broke free from the trap set by the potato chip display. To unleash his special punch spiritual skill, Minghe's fist needed to strike a medium sharing the same elemental attribute. He observed that no suitable mediums were present in the market, and venturing outside posed dangers of being spotted by the other beasts. Unable to find a compatible medium, the 4th beast lunged at Minghe, slashing with its sharp claws. Minghe resolved to confront the 4th beast head-on, relying solely on his own strength. He skillfully evaded the beast's strike and countered with a powerful punch to its abdomen using his left fist. The force sent the beast crashing into a sack of flour. The sack burst open, blanketing the area in flour and severely reducing Minghe's visibility. Spotting the chance to strike, the 4th beast pounced fiercely on Minghe. Caught off guard, Minghe found the beast gripping his shoulders tightly. With one leg pressing down on his right arm, Minghe stumbled backward, forcing him to the ground beneath the weight of the beast. The beast aimed to bite Minghe's head, but he narrowly dodged, causing the creature to falter and weaken its hold on his shoulders. With a lightning-fast strike, Ming-He slammed his right fist into the beast's jaws, unleashing a swift barrage of punches to keep it reeling off balance. Once Ming-He confirmed the beast was unable to evade his attacks, he unleashed a devastating punch. The sheer power of the hit left a clear dent on the market's facade. Without looking back, Ming-He turned and strode away from the aftermath. A gaping hole torn in the market wall revealed the beast's decapitated body slumped against it. Elsewhere along the street, dark blood-tinged liquid sprayed from Dr. Zio's shoulders. Seething with fury, Dr. Zio cursed Ming-He under his breath before making his way toward the gas station. Inside the supermarket there, he discovered the lifeless beast. To confront Ming-He, Dr. Zio resolved that the 3 remaining beasts must undergo evolution. He commanded them to consume the dead creature's flesh. This caused them to grow in size and sprout razor-sharp bony spikes along their spines. Now endowed with heightened factory-honed senses, the beasts became deadlier than ever. Dr. Zio ordered them to capture Ming-He alive. Without hesitation, the beasts charged off in a precise direction. Ming-He sprinted down the street until he spotted the 3 beasts bearing down on him. Perplexed, he wondered how the survivors tracked him down despite his having killed the one with the enhanced sense of smell. The beasts barked fiercely, vaulting over parked cars with agility. Ming-He noticed their barks grow more menacing, carrying a darker, more intimidating tone. Up ahead, Ming-He caught sight of an amusement park. He was convinced that the site was perfect, brimming with complex machinery he could harness once the beasts caught up with him. Ming-He felt assured that possessing a unique medium would steadily enhance his strength. To prevent igniting himself while executing the blazing punch, he chose to rinse off the gasoline thoroughly. Although the beasts had an uncanny ability to track him, Ming-He believed moving continuously was safer than attempting to hide. Ming-He devised a strategy to widen the distance between himself and the beasts, eliminating as many as possible, well aware of his vulnerability against Dr. Zio. As dusk settled, Ming-He wandered through the eerie amusement park. Footsteps on the rooftop drew his attention, prompting him to turn and spot the evolved beast. He was awestruck by the beast's dramatic and intimidating transformation. The beast vaulted down from the building, wielding an axe tightly gripped in its left hand. It slammed the blade forcefully onto the ground, sending vibrations through the air. Ming-He narrowly dodged the strike but couldn't help noticing how much stronger the beast had become. Without hesitation, the beast launched another assault, leaping toward him with an axe in its right hand. Despite the relentless onslaught, Ming-He skillfully evaded every strike with precision. As he backed away, he observed a noticeable slowdown in the beast's movements. Seizing the opportunity, he resolved to stand his ground and fight back against the beast. Suddenly, 2 more beasts emerged, flanking Ming-He from either side. To make his escape, Ming-He sprinted toward the tracks of a nearby roller coaster. He intended to leverage the narrow confines of the tracks, taking down the beasts one at a time. Climbing the track, he infused his fists with mystic punch element extraction, preparing for the imminent battle. The moment Ming-He reached the summit, a ferocious beast leapt out, ready to strike. Without hesitation, Ming-He unleashed a devastating punch with his metal-clad fists, neutralizing the assault and triggering a powerful shockwave. Using his left hand, Ming-He destabilized the beast, then drove his right fist straight through its chest. The creature tumbled off the narrow path as a result. The mystic punch, empowered by absorbed metal, can penetrate monsters at the evolved beast tier, roughly equivalent to warlord rank. Buoyed by confidence, Ming-He prepared to confront each evolved beast individually. Advancing steadily, Ming-He faced a beast charging head-on, while another slithered along the track's lower edge, attempting to flank him. The lead beast swung its razor-sharp axe-like claws in a fierce attack. Ming-He deftly blocked and deflected the blow with his right arm, exposing the beast's vulnerable chest. Seizing the moment, Ming-He lashed out with his left fist, striking the beast's chest. Before his punch landed, a rib-like bony armor erupted from the beast's chest. Though the beast was thrown back, Ming-He's strike failed to penetrate its newly formed bone shield. Ming-He was taken aback by the rapid pace at which these beasts evolved their defenses. A beast lurking below lunged to bite, but Ming-He's swift reflexes allowed him to evade effortlessly. He immediately retaliated, delivering a powerful kick to the creature's neck. The beast smirked as sharp bone needles sprouted menacingly along its neck. Ming-He thought the beast's anatomy was outrageously formidable. The second beast began climbing toward the upper section of the track, while the one that had been thrown off swiftly recovered and positioned itself behind him, effectively surrounding him between the 2 ferocious creatures. Both beasts launched a coordinated assault on Ming-He at the exact same moment. Ming-He narrowly dodged and blocked their strikes with precise punches and evasive movements. Seizing the moment as the beast in front closed the distance, Ming-He delivered a sharp, forceful punch to its jaw with his right fist. At the same time, he drove his left elbow into the beast trailing him, knocking it unconscious instantly. Despite this, the beast before him remained standing and renewed its attack without hesitation. Ming-He responded fiercely, unleashing a relentless barrage of punches as their brutal fight continued unabated. He steadily forced the beast backward. After its companion was down, Ming-He unleashed a powerful left hook that marked a turning point. The beast defensively crossed its arms to block the punch, then smoothly slid downward, evading the follow-up strikes. Recovering from the hit, the beast smirked at Ming-He, ridiculing him for what it perceived as insufficient strength. Ming-He, however, remained unfazed by the beast's taunts, maintaining his focus without a flicker of annoyance. Just as the beast advanced aggressively, the roller coaster vehicle suddenly surged forward. Caught off guard by this unexpected movement, the beast failed to react in time and was struck down by the vehicle. Ming-He hung gripping a bar between the rails as the roller coaster rushed past him, narrowly avoiding danger. Before confronting the evolved beasts, Ming-He had made his way to the control room to assess the situation. He confirmed that the electricity remained active and resolved to utilize the roller coaster ride as a means to wipe out the remaining beasts. Hanging tightly from the bar, Ming-He glanced down and realized that a fall from his position would likely result in either broken legs or instant death. The previously unconscious beast had regained awareness and was now suspended on a nearby bar between the rails, close to Ming-He's location. Using its tail to grip the bar, the beast launched a fierce assault on Ming-He, swinging its dual axe-like hands. Forced to release his grip on the bar, Ming-He quickly braced himself and blocked the savage strike from the beast. Seizing the moment, Ming-He grabbed hold of the beast's axe-shaped hands to control the attack. He deduced that since these beasts are parasitic entities feeding off Dr. Zio, eliminating one would simultaneously diminish a part of Dr. Zio himself. As he descended, Ming-He pulled the beast along. The creature released the bar, convinced that killing Ming-He during the fall still counted as a victory. However, Ming-He managed to pull the beast beneath him and pressed his foot firmly against it. He strategically intended to use the beast's body to cushion the impact of his fall. The beast wailed in despair, realizing that it was meeting an inevitable and grim fate. Moments later, the beast slammed against the ground with a loud, crushing impact. As dust billowed around him, Ming-He emerged from the smoky haze unscathed. Brushing dust off his shirt, he reflected that the beast's downfall was a deserved consequence of its arrogance. Night had already fallen, casting darkness across the sky. Ming-He made his way to the closest water faucet to refresh himself. While on the phone with Nurse Song, she inquired why Ming-He hadn't answered her calls and checked if he was all right. He explained to Nurse Song that his phone had been on silent mode, which is why he hadn't responded sooner. Nurse Song reported that the officials had arrived at the building he mentioned and had secured the area under their control. She also updated him that while the officials were currently eliminating the monsters found inside, they had not encountered either him or Dr. Zio. Ming-He recounted everything to her, revealing that Dr. Zio orchestrated the entire pollution incident and that he was currently at an amusement park. He further explained Dr. Zio's horrific plan to dump the contaminated blood serum into the city's water supply, aiming to devastate Lanyang City's sewage system. Nurse Song was appalled by such a vile scheme. Ming-He informed Nurse Song that he managed to steal the blood serum from Dr. Zio and suspected it was the cause of the mutations. Nurse Song clarified to Ming-He that after experts extract the antibodies from the blood serum, both the antibodies and the mutation catalyst remain present in the organism's blood. She assured Ming-He that once the antibodies were extracted, the polluted southern suburb could be restored to normal, emphasizing the critical importance of the serum he possessed. Nurse Song instructed Ming-He to hold his position while she coordinated with the officials to dispatch a team to the amusement park to pick him up. However, Ming-He disagreed, directing Nurse Song to tell the officials to meet him at the southern tower instead, since Dr. Zio was still pursuing him and he could not remain in one place. He then instructed Nurse Song to inform the authorities that Dr. Zio had mutated, urging them to summon expert help immediately. Without intervention, Dr. Zio was certain to annihilate everyone. Upon Nurse Song's consent, Ming-He swiftly took off, sprinting without hesitation. By the time Ming-He reached the southern tower, Dr. Zio awaited him, fully anticipating his approach. Dr. Zio transformed back into his human form. When Ming-He reached the southern tower, Dr. Zio was already there, waiting for him. Dr. Zio reverted back to his human form. Ming-He froze, stunned at the sight of Dr. Zio. Dr. Zio greeted Ming-He and urged him to look up. When Ming-He glanced upward, he saw his former classmates Lin Yaoyu, Su Jian, Lu Xinghong, and Wang Ziyan strapped into the drop tower. Dr. Zio said he had encountered them on his way. At first he meant to kill them, but after learning they knew Ming-He, he decided to keep them alive. They all pleaded with Ming-He to save them, insisting they were innocent and arguing that the monster's target was Ming-He, not them. They sobbed and screamed that they weren't ready to die. Tears streaking her face, Lin Yaoyu urged Ming-He to run, warning he wasn't strong enough to confront Dr. Zio. In a trembling voice, she revealed that Dr. Zio is a general-ranked monster. Ming-He froze, unsure what to do. He was certain he couldn't defeat the mutated Dr. Zio. He might be able to harden his heart towards Su Zhen, Lu Xinghong, Wang Sai, and Odin, but he could not abandon Lin Yaoyu. So Ming-He chose to buy time until the officials arrived, his only chance to keep everyone alive. As he weighed his next move, Dr. Zio closed the distance with unhurried confidence. When he was near enough, Dr. Zio asked whether there was someone among the 4 classmates Ming-He cared about most. He wondered whether it might be Ming-He's girlfriend, concluding that whoever Ming-He truly cares about must be the one who urged him to flee. Lin Yaoyu flushed with embarrassment as I told Dr. Zio they were simply classmates who looked out for one another. Dr. Zio laughed and asked Ming-He whether they were merely classmates and whether it was worth risking his life for Lin Yaoyu. Ming-He snapped that Dr. Zio would never understand. There is a clear divide between decent people and scoundrels. Dr. Zio's expression hardened as he demanded whether Ming-He was insinuating that he was a scoundrel. Ming-He smirked, recalling the contemptuous rhetoric Dr. Zio had spouted in the underground. He always found it absurd that Dr. Zio called life and humanity cancerous cells corrupting the universe. To Ming-He, however, the emergence of life and humanity in particular brought meaning to a lonely universe. The cosmos evolution ultimately led to the rise of living beings. Dr. Zio challenged him. How does evolution produce life, and in what ways is humanity continuing to evolve? Ming-He argued that ideas and civilizations are always evolving, including humanity, a process that, he believed, can give rise to superhumans. Dr. Zio dismissed the notion, calling superhumans nothing more than resilient viruses capable of defending themselves. Dr. Zio conceded that some viruses are far harder to eradicate because they can evolve and become stronger, and he said it while fixing a hard stare on Ming-He. Ming-He shifted guiltily and avoided Dr. Zio's penetrating gaze. Ming-He suggested that since neither of them could prove they were right, they should settle the matter by force. Whoever was stronger would be declared correct. He proclaimed that he spoke for humanity, then challenged Dr. Zio to say whom he represented. Dr. Zio replied that he embodied the universe's supreme power, the force that would ultimately annihilate humanity. Ming-He produced a vial of blood plasma and declared that if Dr. Zio defeated him, he would hand the plasma over. Dr. Zio smirked and told Ming-He that he didn't know his place. Ming-He jeered that if Dr. Zio couldn't even defeat a student like him, one who had failed to enter the Superhuman Institute, then he should abandon his grandiose beliefs. He pushed the insult further, calling Dr. Zio a loser, a bastard, and nothing but trash. But Dr. Zio refused to take the bait and remained composed. He decided not to make things harder than necessary. If Ming-He refused to give the plasma, Zio would simply kill Ming-He's 4 former classmates. Ming-He dared Dr. Zio to kill their former classmates, arguing that as members of the Superhuman Institute they had sworn to protect the nation, its cities, and its citizens with their lives. Trading those few lives, he insisted, was a price worth paying for the safety of Linyang City. Lin Yaoyu regarded the scene with a calm, dignified expression. Su Zhenghong and Wang Zai were weeping as Ming-He's words sank in. Dr. Zio accepted the challenge. Bone-like needles erupted from his left arm, and he told Ming-He bluntly that he would now kill their former classmates. He snapped one of the needles off, fashioning it into a knife-like blade. With a swift throw, he launched the makeshift blade toward the drop tower, and it struck Su Zheng's right leg. Su Zheng and Wang Zhaoyan stared in stunned disbelief, their eyes widening. Meanwhile, Su Zhen screamed and sobbed at the top of his lungs. Ming-He bolted away, trying to put distance between himself and the danger. Dr. Zio warned Ming-He that he would aim for the pretty face of one of his former classmates, then hurled another bone needle into the drop tower. The needle pierced Lin Yaoyu's right shoulder. Dr. Zio sneered that he had missed again. Ming-He surged into a faster sprint, desperate to escape. Dr. Zio's initial shock snapped into furious anger. He threatened Ming-He again. If he didn't stop running, he would pierce holes all over his former classmates. Ming-He abruptly turned his back on his former classmates and sprinted away without looking back. Dr. Zio couldn't afford to let Ming-He escape again. Once Ming-He decided to run, catching him would be nearly impossible. Although Dr. Zio thought the effort might be wasted, he saw a chance to destroy Ming-He and settle the score. He smiled coldly and accepted Ming-He's challenge. Ming-He stopped running and exhaled, relief flooding through him. Sharp bone needles sprouted up, forming a spiky ring around Ming-He. Dr. Zio suddenly underwent a violent mutation and slammed his power into the ground. The impact sent dust and debris flying in every direction. When the dust settled, a clearing encircled by bone needles was revealed. Dr. Zio told Ming-He that merely running around would achieve nothing, so the area ringed by bone needles would be their arena. He then warned that each time Ming-He left the bounds, one of his former classmates would be killed. Ming-He agreed without hesitation. Dr. Zio taunted that if Ming-He defeated him, he could rescue his classmates and be celebrated as the hero who saved the entire city of Lanyang. While speaking, he snapped a red-hued bone needle that had grown from his left arm and scoffed that Ming-He was far too weak to achieve any of that. He added that he'd heard Ming-He had ended up in the hospital after failing the Superhuman Institute's entrance exam. He claimed Ming-He had even tried to take his own life. Dr. Zio could hardly believe he had been the surgeon who operated on Ming-He. He sneered that Ming-He was nothing more than a nameless failure who couldn't even pass the superhuman exam. No one expected anything from him. His classmates' only feeling toward him was pity. Dr. Zio said his peers spent their time mocking his incompetence rather than helping him. Only when the teacher forced them did anyone place flowers for him at the start. After that, almost no one visited him for an entire year. Now Dr. Zio was assaulting Ming-He both physically and verbally. Ming-He simply dodged Dr. Zio's blows and remained silent. Dr. Zio despised Ming-He for what he saw as a lowly, joyless existence. And now, in Zio's eyes, Ming-He was arrogantly trying to play the hero. At the same time, Ming-He struggled to evade every strike and was being forced backward. Lin Ye urged Ming-He to run. Seizing an opening, Dr. Zio's right hand transformed into a sickle, and he lunged in to slash Ming-He. Ming-He stumbled back, a wound opening across his chest as blood began to flow. Lin Ye cried, begging Ming-He to just leave. Ming-He stayed silent and slowly rose to his feet, clutching his bleeding chest with his left hand. Dr. Zio sneered, asking why Ming-He had bothered to wake up and saying he should have died on the operating table a year ago. He licked his hand and taunted that even if Ming-He was awake now, nothing could be changed. Ming-He was about to step beyond the circle of bone needles when he remembered Dr. Zio's threat. If he left the boundary, one of his former classmates would be killed. Dr. Zio closed the distance and sneered that Ming-He was nothing more than an insignificant insect in the world. Dr. Zio lunged to strike, but Ming-He countered by flicking his blood into the doctor's eyes. Ming-He immediately slipped around and positioned himself behind Zio. Ming-He's hands flared crimson as he drove a punch into Dr. Zio's head, snarling that Zio was the repulsive one, the man living a filthy, miserable life. Dr. Zio collapsed to the floor. It turned out that Ming-He's own blood served as a powerful conduit for the mystic punch. He named the technique the Blood Feign Fist. From the drop tower, Ming-He's former classmates erupted into cheers. They shouted for Ming-He to finish off Dr. Zio. Sezheng wept and begged Ming-He to save them first, but Ming-He feared he might bleed out and die. Wang Ziyan snapped that Ming-He was bleeding far worse and taunted Sezheng and Lu Zhenhong as cowards. Lin Yaoyu sobbed, pleading with Ming-He to tend to his wound first, but at that moment Ming-He himself was losing too much blood. Suddenly, a bone needle clattered to the ground. Dr. Zio spoke up, scolding them for being too noisy and warning that once he had dealt with Ming-He, he would tear the others to pieces. Then he pulled the arena's bone needles from the wounds inflicted when he fell on his back. Right after that, Ming-He's former classmates fell utterly silent. Dr. Zio stood, extracting the final bone needle from his shoulder, and told Ming-He he had realized Ming-He's power manifested through his fists. In that instant, Ming-He's arms dimmed. Before Dr. Zio could finish removing the last needle, Ming-He seized the opening and landed a punch on his face. The blow snapped Dr. Zio's head to the side, and despite himself, he couldn't help admiring the force behind it. He shrugged it off, declaring the strike would be useless against someone like him. Then he remembered how Ming-He had once killed a mutated giant rat with a single blazing punch near the hospital bridge. Ming-He's arms flared red once more. Ming-He immediately unleashed a barrage of punches at Dr. Zio's head and torso, and Dr. Zio was unable to defend against them. He capped the combination with a powerful left hook. The impact shoved Dr. Zio backward, but he remained on his feet. As he spoke, he told Ming-He he'd observed that Ming-He can absorb different mediums and channel their properties through his punches. Dr. Zio found Ming-He's ability intriguing, but remained confident it would not be enough to defeat someone of his strength. At that moment, Lu Xinghong remembered that Ming-He's power was tied to a conspicuous white dust type, a luck-related trait rather than a true combat ability. Wang Ziyan was bewildered too, but one thing felt certain: Ming-He was stronger than any of them. She shouted her support and urged him to kill Dr. Zio. Meanwhile, Dr. Zio stamped forward once and the ground split with spreading cracks. He closed in on Ming-He and bragged that he now possessed Lord rank strength, nothing like the cockroaches and maggots Ming-He had crushed before. Sneering, he said that with only a blue spirit ability, Ming-He couldn't defeat him even if he punched until his knuckles were ruined. With mocking sweetness, he asked how it felt to be completely under someone else's control, used and played with like a toy. Even as Ming-He gave everything he had, Dr. Zio laughed and declared that the weak remain weak, superhuman or not. Ming-He, he boasted, could never compare to his flawless body, and Ming-He wasn't the only one who knew how to throw a punch. Talking as he moved, Dr. Zio drew back his arm, lining up a crushing punch at Ming-He. But Ming-He reacted in a flash, driving his own fist forward to collide with Dr. Zio's strike. Even so, the impact forced him backward. Every hit seemed pointless. Dr. Zio's regeneration erased the damage as fast as it landed. Dr. Zio pursued him relentlessly, continuing to hurl punch after punch. Ming-He could only dodge and block, with no chance to mount a counterattack. Worse, he realized that once Dr. Zio clenched his hand into a tight fist, his strikes became markedly faster. At that moment, Dr. Zio spotted an opening and drove his left fist into Ming-He's stomach. Ming-He reacted too slowly to dodge or parry Dr. Zio's strike. The punch hurled him through the air, sending him tumbling away. Bone needles abruptly sprouted from Dr. Zio's body, jagged and deadly. He launched the bone barbs at Ming-He while he still hung in midair. Ming-He had no choice but to raise his arms and try to shield himself from the raining needles. Dr. Zio was baffled that, despite firing from point-blank range, not a single needle had found its mark. At the same instant, Ming-He landed safely, equally stunned by his own escape. Dr. Zio suddenly remembered that Ming-He possessed a subtle but potent form of luck. He admired how useful it was. Had even one needle hit, Ming-He would have been killed or crippled. He tore a large bone needle free from his arm and aimed it at the drop tower, brandishing it like a spear. He then told Ming-He that, regrettably, his former classmates did not enjoy the same fortunate protection. Perplexed, Ming-He reminded Dr. Zio that they had an agreement. Dr. Zio laughed, insisting he wasn't breaking his promise, then coldly advised Ming-He to look where he was standing. Ming-He realized he had been pushed beyond the arena's boundary. Dr. Zio declared that, because of his incompetence, one of his former classmates would die. Suzhen, Lu Xinghong, and Wang Ziyan screamed, desperately begging Dr. Zio to spare them. Lin Yaoyu's eyes mirrored the cold silhouette of the bone spear as it drove forward. Moments later, the bone spear pierced her chest. Her eyes widened and her head fell forward limply moments later. Ming-He stared at Lin Yaoyu with wide eyes. Shock, disbelief, and profound sorrow were written across his face. He bit his lower lip as a wave of rage consumed him. Dr. Zio told Ming-He to stop being so tense. From Dr. Zio's medical perspective, Lin Yaoyu won't die immediately as long as she doesn't pull the bone spear out. However, she will have no chance of survival unless she receives treatment within 5 minutes. Still seething, Ming-He stepped toward the ring of bone needles and deliberately pierced his own hands. He then clenched his fists. The tips of the bone needles snapped, freeing his hands from the piercings. In that instant, his fists flared red once more. At the same time, he declared to Dr. Zio that he would be dead before the 5 minutes were up. They charged at each other, and by then Ming-He's arms had stopped glowing. He drove a fist into Dr. Zio's chest, but the strike had no visible effect. Dr. Zio countered with a punch to Ming-He's face, reminding him that his power is only blue spirit rank after all. He pointed out that he was essentially at his limit, and even if Ming-He expended every drop of blood, it still wouldn't be enough. Dr. Zio was so certain of his victory that he barely bothered to defend. He expected Ming-He to bleed out soon. He taunted him as he effortlessly parried and struck, intent on utterly humiliating him. Dr. Zio sneered that Ming-He looked as pitiful now as when he was first brought in after his suicide attempt, adding that doctors like him despised patients who survived such attempts. If Ming-He couldn't even accomplish something as easy as ending his own life, Zio spat, then he had no right to live. Ming-He wanted to die, yet he wound up in the hospital, forcing doctors to waste their time and resources trying to save him. He called Ming-He a worthless worm nobody cared about, so weak and pathetic that even his attempt to end his life had failed. Zio continued his verbal assault, recounting how Ming-He's condition had devastated his family. With medical bills unpaid, his sister had been stripped of dignity, even kneeling to beg hospital staff not to discharge him. He and his sister had always lived in the city's lowest district, surviving by doing backbreaking work for the wealthy and powerful. Zio taunted him, asking why he was fooling himself into thinking he was important. Then, without warning, he landed a heavy punch and shoved Ming-He aside. Dr. Zio crouched low and then sprang forward. Suspended in midair, Dr. Zio coldly offered Ming-He an escape, urging him to end his miserable life so he would no longer burden anyone. He brought his hands together, and bone spikes erupted violently from his knuckles. Dr. Zio looked down at Ming-He's diminutive figure, sneered, and shouted that he was utterly insignificant. Plummeting from his jump, he readied a devastating strike aimed straight at Ming-He. Dr. Zio unleashed his Colossus Hammer Smash. When Dr. Zio struck the ground, a roiling cloud of dust rose up and swallowed the view. As the dust settled, Dr. Zio rose to his feet, and when he peered ahead, surprise registered across his face. He conceded that Ming-He had narrowly avoided the Colossus Hammer Smash, but mocked that the fighter was once again out of bounds. Enormous bone spikes shot up around Dr. Zio, making it clear Ming-He was outside the arena. Had he remained inside, those spikes would have impaled him. Dr. Zio declared that since Ming-He had escaped the attack, someone else would have to die instead. He then grabbed one of the massive bone spikes. This time, Ming-He finally answered. He told Dr. Zio he had never tried to kill himself and that he valued his life above all else. Dr. Zio brushed Ming-He off, saying it was irrelevant. What mattered, he said coldly, was that he had just caused the death of another one of his victims. Among his classmates, Ming-He replied that Dr. Zio was the one everyone ignored. His sister had swallowed her pride and begged Dr. Zio because she loved him. He was her only family. He remembered his sister's promise from the hospital. Even if he never woke up, she would keep visiting him, even when she was so old she had to walk there with a cane. He told Dr. Zio that even Nurse Song hadn't abandoned him during the animal mutations, when everyone else was fleeing for their lives. She had stayed by his side throughout the entire year. He lay unconscious. This time, he vowed never to forsake his former classmates, because Lin Yaoyu had taken the lead and rallied the whole class to raise funds for him. At that moment, Lin Yaoyu listened with her eyes closed and tears streaming, while Dr. Zio snapped that Ming-He's words were meaningless. The girl who gathered the donations was dying before them. Ming-He's left eye bled, but his expression was grave and resolute. He told Dr. Zio that despite his ability to self-heal and regenerate limbs, every punch he landed still scarred his body. The next instant, Ming-He's fist flared red. He revealed that he'd landed a total of 49 punches. At that moment, Dr. Zio gasped, breaking into a cold sweat as he grew cautious. Right then, enormous blue fists materialized above Ming-He, and his stance bristled as if he were about to strike. He lunged at Dr. Zio, roaring the name of his ultimate technique as he closed the distance. Ming-He bellowed the attack's name, star-marked galactic fists, his cry ripping through the air as the assault began. Dr. Zio stared, baffled. Ming-He was unleashing an ultimate ability, a Violet Soul rank superpower. He could hardly believe that a member of the Heaven Sovereign Organization might be defeated by someone who couldn't even enter the Superhuman Institute. The incoming fists reflected in Dr. Gel's shocked eyes. Moments later, a relentless volley of blows descended like an avalanche. When the impact reached Ming-He's former classmates, their eyes went wide, stunned speechless by the force. A crater gouged out the ground where Dr. Zio had been standing. He lay sprawled, face down, at its center. Kneeling beside the pit, Ming-He rose and told Dr. Zio coolly that although his own power might seem modest, it was still 1,000 times greater than that of a despicable scoundrel like him. He then raced to the drop tower's control room and activated the mechanisms to begin lowering his former classmates. Afterward, he sprinted back to the drop tower and confirmed that the platform had started its descent. At that moment, his former classmates, everyone except Lin Yaoyu, were buzzing with disbelief over Minghe's violet soul rank. None of them had expected him to be that powerful, and they were stunned that he could already unleash an ultimate move. Tears streamed down Wang Ziyan's face as she thanked Minghe. He was unbelievably strong. Lu Xinghong and Wang Ziyan were convinced the Superhuman Institute had made a grave mistake by rejecting him. They suspected the Institute's testing process was flawed and that the examiners had failed to do their job properly. Afterward, Lu Xinghong fell silent when he saw Minghe holding Lin Yaoyu. She forced herself to speak and, voice trembling, asked Minghe whether she was going to die. Minghe reassured her that she would not die, officials would arrive any moment. At the same time, Wang Ziyan fell into a stunned silence, her face showing that she had noticed something significant. Meanwhile, Lin Yaoyu told Minghe that none of them had realized he was so powerful. Suzanne, standing beside her, could only force an awkward laugh. Soon, Lu Xinghong and Wang Ziyan spotted the approaching officials and began shouting and waving frantically to grab their attention. At the same moment, officials spotted Minghe and his former classmates being led by a woman with cat ears, Luo Lin. Commander Luo Lin ordered her subordinate to neutralize the threat and announced she would oversee care for the wounded. The medical team trailing her quickly recognized that Minghe's group consisted only of students. One of the medics instructed Luo Xinghong to step aside and let the medical personnel manage the situation. A medic noted that Lin Yaoyu's condition was not necessarily fatal provided they began treatment immediately, since the spear remained lodged and had not been removed. Meanwhile, Minghe stood beside Commander Luo Lin. Seeing the severity of his injuries, she ordered the medical team to prioritize his care. At Lin Yaoyu's side, emergency personnel prepared a blood transfusion and initiated life-saving treatment. Commander Luo Lin also told Minghe that, earlier on their route, they had encountered a lower-rank mutant organism. She regarded Minghe and his classmates as fortunate to be alive. He then asked Minghe where the lower-rank mutant had escaped to. Lin Qingtu, a Sunblaze-ranked operative whom Commander Luo Lin had sent to illuminate the threat, approached and reported that the danger had been resolved. She cautioned him against carelessness and stressed the importance of vigilance on missions. She suspected the lower-rank mutant might still be hiding nearby, waiting for an opening to strike. Lin Qingtu announced that the lower-rank mutant was already dead, its body still lying in the pit. He had seen a human-like mutant that apparently used the contaminated substance as a catalyst to alter its own body. She froze in shock when she realized the lower-rank mutant was dead. She spun around and demanded to know who had killed the lower-rank mutant. All eyes turned and the crowd pointed at Minghe. Commander Luo Lin stepped forward and asked him plainly whether he had slain the lower-rank mutant. Minghe, who was being bandaged by medics, replied yes and said he was the one who reported the incident. He then tried to introduce himself, but the medic tending his wounds told him to stay still. Ignoring the medic's warning, he produced a vial of blood and handed it to Commander Luo Lin, explaining it was the pollutant he had stolen from Dr. Xiao and that Dr. Xiao planned to release it into the water system. She took the vial and inspected it closely. After a moment, she suddenly burst out and asked how he had done it. Minghe misunderstood and explained that he had taken the blood while Dr. Xiao was distracted. She then clarified her question. How had he managed to kill a lower-rank mutant? He admitted that he had killed Dr. Xiao with his bare fists. The medic grew impatient because Minghe kept shifting around, but Minghe ignored him and told Commander Luo Lin that his superpower was simply his fists. She asked what rank he held within the department. Minghe replied that he was an apprentice at the Starlight rank. She found it absurd that a creature capable of killing 2 Moonglow rank superhumans could be defeated by an apprentice of the Starlight rank. Wang Ziyan interjected respectfully that Minghe had only become a superhuman a few days earlier. He added that Minghe hadn't even been admitted to the Superhuman Institute. After his emergency treatment was finished, Minghe thanked the medical team for their care. At that moment, Commander Luo Lin seemed to remember something. She realized he was the same arrogant, defiant student who had been on the other end of the walkie-talkie a few days earlier. One of the medics also recognized Minghe as the young hero who had saved a busload of people near Nanjia Hospital and admitted he hadn't recognized him earlier because his face was covered in blood. Lin Qingtu gripped Minghe's shoulder and told him that this time he was a true hero, the man who had saved the entire city of Lanyang. He had made the high-ranking superhumans look like statues, impressive in appearance but ultimately ineffective. Ming-He answered that he had simply given everything he had to buy time and protect his former classmates. Commander Luo Lin then asked if he would consider joining the official superhuman organization. The position paid well, offered a range of benefits, and she hinted that his future colleagues would be just as attractive as she was. Lin Qingtu muttered under his breath that she was shameless. Annoyed, she demanded that Lin Qingtu repeat what he just said. Lin Qingtu hurriedly sprang to her defense, insisting that all those other women paled in comparison to her. A medic standing behind them couldn't help but chuckle. Commander Luo Lin then urged Ming-He to think it over. With his family living in Nanjia and the Superhuman Institute uninterested in him, the official organization would welcome him with open arms. Ming-He replied that he would think about it. But before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly fainted. Commander Luo Lin and Lin Qingtu moved instantly, catching Ming-He as he went limp. A medic quickly checked Ming-He and determined that he had likely passed out from blood loss sustained in his injuries. In short, he had overexerted himself. Commander Luo Lin decided to take Ming-He to the hospital immediately and instructed someone to prepare a press statement. On Wednesday, December 27, Takuwani News ran a report on Lanyang City's most recent victory. The reporter recounted how Lanyang City had been cleared of mutant creatures through the tireless efforts of the Superhuman Institute, the Hunters Association, and the official superhuman organization. The news reporter highlighted that one person had discovered the contaminated site and, by acting swiftly to contain the spread, made an invaluable contribution. Lanyang's hero is currently hospitalized and receiving treatment. Reporters plan to conduct an exclusive interview as soon as he regains consciousness. At Lanyang Hospital, Ming-He lay unconscious in his bed. Nurse Song sat beside him, her expression drawn with worry. After a short pause, he suddenly opened his eyes. Nurse Song's face lit up with relief and joy when she saw him awake. She told Ming-He he had slept for 2 full days and that everyone had feared he might not wake. Ming-He then asked why she was there. She explained she had been transferred to this ward and had personally requested that the hospital provide him with special care. She added that he had become Lanyang's young hero and that numerous reporters were waiting outside for interviews. She smiled throughout the conversation. Ming-He suddenly asked Nurse Song about Lin Yaoyu's condition and what had happened to her. Nurse Song replied that Lin Yaoyu remained in the intensive care unit, but after consulting the doctor, she learned that Lin Yaoyu's condition was no longer considered life-threatening. Nurse Song assured him that with continued hospital care and a gradual recovery from her injuries, Lin Yaoyu would be fine. Ming-He sat up as she adjusted his pillow, visibly relieved by the good news. The door to the room swung open abruptly. A young woman and an elderly man in uniform stepped inside. Commander Luo Lin and General Li from the official superhuman organization immediately asked about Ming-He's condition. He assured them he felt fine and that there was nothing seriously wrong. Nurse Song praised Ming-He's resilience, nodding that his injuries had healed remarkably quickly. Commander Luo Lin smiled with approval and said Ming-He was more than suitable for their official superhuman organization. They had been specifically seeking a superhuman with a formidable, almost monstrous physique. General Li rose respectfully and called Ming-He by name to get his attention. He explained that he had not only uncovered Zhao Shuihua's scheme, but had also prevented the disaster from spreading throughout the city. On behalf of the city and the Lanyang official superhuman organization, he offered sincere gratitude for Ming-He's service. Together, General Li and Commander Luo Lin bowed to him. Nurse Song looked shocked, but Ming-He waved it off, saying he had only done what needed to be done. After a moment, General Li and Ming-He exchanged a look, and the room's atmosphere shifted suddenly. Commander Luo Lin then mentioned that Nurse Song happened to have the day off and asked if she would join them outside to decide where to eat. Nurse Song agreed, saying it had been a long time since they'd hung out. She insisted on milk tea, a full meal, and dessert. Commander Luo Lin agreed without hesitation. It would be his treat, and as soon as they stepped out of the room, he moved to keep that promise. General Li took a seat and opened the conversation. He asked General Li what important matter required a private discussion. General Li wondered inwardly how the other man had known he wanted to speak in confidence. Ming-He explained that he had noticed Commander Luo Lin's supposed day off was a pretext to get Nurse Song to leave. General Li praised Ming-He's sharp perception. He said he'd heard about the clash with Zhao Ziyu Hua from Nurse Song and some former classmates. By raw strength alone, Ming-He wasn't Zhao's equal yet. He had still managed to defeat Dr. Zhao, a genuinely remarkable accomplishment. Many superhumans fall into the mistaken belief that a higher rank automatically equals greater power. In reality, rank doesn't guarantee superiority. Success depends on applying one's abilities cleverly and relying on tactical ingenuity. It was for those reasons that General Li commended Ming-He's skill. Ming-He shrugged and suggested his hidden advantage might simply be luck. He's a bit luckier than most people. General Li replied that there was no need for false modesty, but warned that luck can only protect someone temporarily. He then pointed out that Ming-He's long stalemate with Dr. Zhao couldn't be explained away as mere luck. Ming-He waved his hand and told General Li he was being too kind. After a pause, General Li asked Ming-He, his voice grave, what he had heard from Dr. Zhao. Ming-He replied that Dr. Zhao had mostly ranted about humanity being the universe's cancer, then went on to recount everything Dr. Zhao had said. When General Li heard the claim about a heavenly sovereignty, he responded that Dr. Zhao's words were not simply delusions. Ming-He frowned, clearly puzzled by General Li's reaction. General Li explained that their research showed all the calamity demons originated from meteors. Each meteor carried a creature capable of threatening humanity. Every creature possesses instincts, and the primary one for any species is the drive to survive in its own world. He then asked Ming-He whether he knew what the foremost instinct of those calamity demons might be. Ming-He guessed that their dominant instinct was to kill. General Li confirmed his guess. The calamity demons' primary impulse was slaughter. They would keep killing until humanity ceased to exist. Ming-He then asked whether that made them the universe's cancer. General Li clarified that after survival, their next instinct was exploration and curiosity, which made the question more complicated. Since humanity is only beginning to explore the cosmos, he could not give a definitive answer. Even the leading superhumans and top cosmologists are unable to say with certainty what reality or ultimate truth truly is. Ming-He argued that if the universe truly intended humanity's extinction, it would never have granted them superpowers, powers that allow humanity's superhumans to stand against the calamity demons. General Li agreed, calling it a compelling point. The rise of superhumans is the strongest evidence against the notion that humans are the universe's cancer. He suggested that perhaps humans are the universe's newborns while the invading calamity demons act like a form of cosmic contagion. With his right fist pressed to his chest, General Li declared that until the ultimate truth is revealed, they would not let the invading calamity creatures overwhelm them. He vowed that superhumans would shield humanity's voyage of exploration and keep the flame of civilization burning bright. Ming-He replied that he, too, is now a superhuman, though he admitted he does not yet possess the strength to protect all of humanity. He promised, however, to safeguard at least those closest to him. To conclude their conversation, General Li said there were two matters he needed to confirm with Ming-He and asked that Ming-He be fully candid. Ming-He agreed without hesitation. The first concerned an object their astronomy team had detected a year earlier. General Li explained it was a meteor they had nicknamed the Goddess. When the meteor entered Earth's atmosphere, it abruptly changed course and detonated high above the planet. By chance, Ming-He had been near one of the meteorites and was knocked unconscious, remaining in a coma for an entire year. Afterward, General Li asked Ming-He to describe what he had witnessed. Ming-He said he had seen only a blinding flash of lightning rip across the sky before he lost consciousness. General Li frowned, skeptical. Was he absolutely certain he hadn't seen anything emerge from the meteorite, any movement or creature? Ming-He insisted he had seen nothing, then asked, with visible anxiety, whether one of those dreaded calamity demons might have been inside the meteor. General Li stood, drew back the curtains, and explained that calamities are classified on a scale from 1 to 12. A grade 1 calamity is roughly as destructive as a major natural disaster, such as a tornado. He added that the mutant demon incident in Nanjiao had been rated grade 3, and that Dr. Zhao had nearly manipulated the water supply to escalate it toward grade 6, stopping just in time. Ming-He was stunned that an event as severe as the mutant outbreak had been classified only as grade 3. General Li then revealed the initial evaluation of the new calamity they had been monitoring. The goddess had already declared it to be a grade 9 calamity. Ming-He was shaken to learn it had been classified as a grade 9 calamity. General Li revealed that the goddess's destructive reach spans several provinces and could threaten the entirety of South China. Ming-He suddenly understood how terrifying a goddess calamity could be. General Li emphasized that the meteor itself isn't the true danger, the real threat lies in what it carries inside. 5 years ago, a grade 8 calamity struck South China. Investigators traced its cause to an Emperor-class calamity beast. The contamination was ultimately linked to the Emperor-class beast's blood. At the time, underground merchants were secretly hoarding samples of that blood. Ming-He was disturbed to learn that even a small amount of that blood could cause enormous damage, and alarmed that people were storing large quantities of it. General Li warned that the entity inside the calamity meteor, the goddess, is just as terrifying and could even threaten humanity's existence. The official superhuman organization has long searched for the meteorite without success. Ming-He is their closest witness and personally felt the meteor's shockwaves, so the organization hopes to draw crucial clues from his account. Ming-He apologized for having no useful lead about the goddess. General Li dismissed the apology. They had only hoped to confirm a detail. He suggested the object inside the meteor might have remained with other fragments, landed elsewhere, or fallen in a different region or country. Ming-He changed the subject and asked what else General Li wanted to discuss. Li stepped closer and admitted that Commander Luo Lin had been pressing him to recommend Ming-He. She hopes he will consider joining the official superhuman organization. Ming-He's luck with powers seemed uncanny. General Li could scarcely believe that after a year-long coma, Ming-He woke with a violet soul fist-type ability. To Li, the whole incident appeared to be a blessing in disguise. General Li then asked for Ming-He's thoughts about joining General Li. The general then opened the door and stepped outside. Once the door clicked shut, Ming-He settled into meditation. As he closed his eyes, he slipped into his spiritual realm. In that realm, Ming-He stood on a raised platform, facing a statue of a long-haired woman. He stared at the figure, sensing that it had somehow absorbed General Li's words. Then the statue's surface spidered with cracks, and its eyes snapped open to lock onto Ming-He. A blinding light erupted, flooding Ming-He's spiritual world. When the glare faded, a colossal dark-skinned woman was revealed, a third eye set in the center of her forehead. Ming-He wasted no time asking if she was a grade 9 calamity. The goddess shrank to his height and with a hint of pride corrected him. He was underestimating her. She was at least grade 11. Still hovering, Ming-He pressed her. Had she truly come to annihilate humanity? She agreed. The doctor's warning was true. The universe itself was reeling, distressed by humanity's rampant greed. Ming-He took a seat on the steps and told her that, if anything, he now had even more reason to prevent her from leaving. The goddess, blazing with fury, labeled him despicable and reminded him she had bestowed a strength-type superpower. She also pointed out that while he lay in a year-long coma, she permitted him to train in her meditation dimension, training that ultimately enabled him to defeat the mutant doctor. Ming-He calmly retorted that they shared a single body. If he died, she would die too. She could not deny that an unexpected accident had forced her into his body. Instead of admitting vulnerability, she attacked Ming-He's frail form and dismissed it as unworthy. Looking up, Ming-He recalled General Li's claim that their first instinct was to kill. He countered that her instinct had been to survive. She had chosen to share a body with a weak host in order to live. Offended, the goddess snapped that he must not compare her to lowly calamity demons. She is a deity, not a monster. She leaned close and warned that suitable hosts are hard to find and that merging bodies requires a long, painful adjustment. Ming-He had needed an entire year to stabilize. Unfazed, Ming-He replied that the powers she granted were fair compensation for putting him in a coma. The goddess gave up the argument with a dismissive wave, insisting they would live in peace from now on. Ming-He answered that her instinct simply reflected humanity's earliest impulse, to live on Earth. The goddess asked what he meant, and he answered that she didn't truly understand the nature of the universe. She was only following some inscrutable will. Ming-He offered to take her around the world to show its beauty in the hope of changing her perspective. He insisted they would get along and extended his hand while the goddess debated the offer. She slapped his hand away and said they could only get along if he trained harder. After all, he'd nearly died facing a pseudolord, and she refused to risk dying alongside him. Excitedly scanning her system, the goddess promised to create powerful opponents to train him, but he simply flopped to the ground, yawned, and declined, claiming he was exhausted and needed rest. He closed his eyes and admitted he couldn't even manage a session of meditation. Then he snapped awake in the real world. With his hand pressed to his chest, he pictured the nuclear bomb inside him and worried how unpredictable the consequences would be if he ever told anyone about her. Gazing out the window, he thought he might be able to reform her and prevent a grade 9 calamity, but first it would be prudent to build a relationship. Reporters swarmed the hospital entrance as Ming-He prepared to be discharged. Everyone wanted to see the young man who had ended the mutant threat and to land an interview with him. Ming-He stepped out of the hospital wearing a mask. The moment reporters spotted him, they swarmed forward, pressing him to remove it and say something so the public could put a face to the story. Their collective shouting and jostling, all demanding he speak at once, left him overwhelmed and disoriented. He closed his eyes to steady himself, then told the reporters that he had only been trying to protect the people closest to him. He made clear that government officials and organized institutions had been the primary forces responsible for eliminating the mutant creatures. Lin Yaoyu and his former classmates, watching the interview, exchanged looks of relief and quiet pride. When Ming-He declared that everyone who had stepped in to help at Nanjia was a hero, they all agreed. Each of them had, in their own way, become a hero of Linyang. One of them, Luo Kai-Chuan, knelt before his friends' graves, paying a silent, solemn tribute. Xiao Lan insisted that their squad were the true heroes of the city, proud of what they'd accomplished together. At the park, Ming-He felt he was saying goodbye to his youth and realized it would be safer to avoid public exposure. Otherwise, he feared being seized for study in a laboratory and dissected. Still, he smiled as he checked his bank account. The reward had made him financially secure, and his sister could finally breathe a little easier. He approached his sister at the ice cream stand and surprised her. Inwardly, he was relieved that he'd asked Nurse Song not to tell their older sister about his hospitalization so she wouldn't have to worry. With a proud smile, he told her that an official had given him a generous reward for his bravery and suggested they go out to celebrate, but she declined. She needed to sell ice cream all day and preferred to save the money for the future. Ming-He stood beside her behind the counter, grinning as he offered to help sell ice cream so they could eat out later. His sister laughed and teased him for wasting time instead of studying for next year's exam. She told him to admire the hero who resolved the mutant incident in Nanyang and use him as a role model, adding that if he kept studying diligently, she was sure he could pass the Superhuman Institute's exam next year. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly and offered a weak excuse that the doctor had advised him to get some fresh air, so he'd come by to help out. He called out cheerfully that they were serving every flavor to attract more customers, while his sister entertained the people who stopped at the stand. From across the square, Commander Luo Lin watched Ming-He and thought him foolish for turning down every media approach and deliberately stepping into the city's spotlight just to run errands and help his older sister. At the same time, she admired him for his sensible, responsible behavior. He was acting far more mature than his years implied. Still watching him, she called over to discuss an offer. Would he consider joining their official superhuman organization, and had he given the idea any thought? He replied that he had thought about it, explaining that his elder sister had worked for years so he could continue his studies. He added that his sister had always hoped he would enter the Superhuman Institute. He planned to prepare for its special recruitment program but intended to apply only after he graduated, and Luo Lin said she understood. He was still young. She explained their organization included an elite, independent unit called Dragon Tooth. Operatives who don't keep fixed hours, intervene when the city faces exceptional threats, and remain free to affiliate with other superhuman groups. She said members only need to respond to especially dangerous situations. They are granted officer-level authority and receive an annual stipend, a useful point since tuition at superhuman institutes can be prohibitively expensive. Ming-He was taken aback by the offer, and Luo Lin quickly reassured him that it wouldn't impinge on his freedom. He could choose his missions, and by assisting them twice a year, he would qualify for the stipend. He replied calmly that they could reach him anytime. Serving his country, he believed, was every superhuman's duty. She laughed that he was all talk and took his answer as a yes, then declared he would make an outstanding Dragon Tooth agent and that she looked forward to working with him. Ming-He smiled and agreed. When the call ended, Ming-He glanced toward the tree Luo Lin had been leaning against earlier, but it was empty. His sister approached him, stretching, and said they were finished selling. She asked who had called. He explained it was an official organization offering him a part-time job with generous pay, so she wouldn't need to work so hard anymore. They might even afford a new house, which his sister could hardly believe. She suggested celebrating by eating out. They chose seafood for dinner and enjoyed the meal to their heart's content. He persuaded his sister to try on the new clothes he had bought. Finally, they moved into their new house. While they talked on the balcony, Ming-hee told his sister he was happy even though they were still renting. He hoped they would be able to buy the place. She said their life was already good, but he insisted it would only get better. During the conversation, his sister suddenly brought up Lanyang City's mysterious hero and asked him to thank the hero on her behalf, a request that startled Ming-hee. With a solemn look, she told him how important it was to express gratitude. She had heard that the hero faced a monster far stronger than himself to defend the city. He had risked his life, standing his ground instead of running away. She pointed out that even small comforts like children enjoying ice cream at the park depended on that sacrifice. Their new comfortable home and the city's peaceful, everyday life existed only because of the superhumans. So she tapped his shoulder and urged him to thank the hero if he ever had the chance. He promised he would remember. Later in the shower, Ming-hee insisted there was no need for thanks. He would risk every fiber of his being and every drop of his blood to keep her safe. From that moment on, Ming-hee threw himself into an intense, disciplined training regimen. He focused on strengthening his core, building cardiovascular endurance, refining his technique, and expanding his tactical knowledge through practical, hands-on drills. The goddess constructed a simulated version of the mutant Dr. Xiao for his combat practice, a training that pleased Ming-hee since he had not forgiven Xiao for what he had done. She told him his primary focus should be improving his physique. His fighting instincts were strong, but his body couldn't yet match his mind. She also explained that his current combat rank belonged to the Moon Glow tier and that he needed to reach Sunblaze to stop being so easily killed. During the simulated battle with Dr. Xiao, he asked the goddess whether reaching the Sunblaze rank would allow him to unleash the Kyuhan Fist Absolute Domain. She replied that it would. His Kyuhan Fist would evolve into a red sovereign talent, and once he activated its absolute domain, Dr. Xiao would be reduced to nothing more than an ant. He remembered his teacher saying that talents let people break through their limits, and he began to believe his fists were truly exceptional. He also recalled asking about red sovereign talents, but his teacher had told him to wait until he reached the Superhuman Institute before learning those secrets. The goddess explained that a red sovereign talent grants an absolute domain. The user's powers swell dramatically while their opponent becomes constrained, much like a game where the domain holder sets the rules. Ming-hee asked if she could simulate the experience so he could feel it firsthand, but she refused. She admonished him to keep hunting his ultimate soul art and warned him never to attempt a red sovereign talent until he had mastered his violent soul ability. Ming-hee explained that his ultimate soul art required a sufficient number of marks to function, and he was lucky he left 49 fist marks on Dr. Xiao, otherwise he would have died. He then asked whether the star mark Galactic Fist would become more powerful if he left additional marks. While the goddess hovered midair projecting his ultimate soul art, she confirmed his theory and told him that 49 marks were the minimum required for activation. Therefore, his punches must become more precise. He needs to exploit his surroundings and use explosive strikes to stack additional fist marks. Ming-hee stared intently at the projection as the goddess explained that, if he followed her guidance, he could unlock Kyuhan Fist's ultimate soul art much earlier. A month later at the train station, Ming-hee and his sister waved goodbye, and as he dragged his suitcase toward the train, he reassured her not to be sad. He was merely going to take a test, not heading to a battlefield. At the Nanjusian Industrial Zone, the area was blanketed by a crimson aura and a thick, oppressive fog. Two patrolling guards opted not to search further. The fog was so dense they could barely see ahead. One of them, Old Wang, complained about the chill, pointing out it wasn't even September while they walked back. When Old Wang realized they still hadn't reached the factory, the other guard asked whether they'd taken the wrong path. He snapped back forcefully that it was impossible. He had walked that route for 10 years and wouldn't take the wrong way even with his eyes closed. As they approached the factory, a sudden noise made Old Wang spin around. He swung his flashlight toward the source. To his shock, a gigantic spider was feasting on his colleague, who was frantically pleading for help. Old Wang bolted, his face contorted with horror, screaming as he ran. Inside the control room, Old Wang was breathing heavily as he closed the door behind him. Hands trembling, he fumbled to make a call when a human-shaped silhouette caught his eye outside the window. He sprinted outside to warn the person of the imminent danger. Instead of a person, the door revealed a female-looking monster, razor teeth, glowing eyes, and hair that writhed like tentacles. One tendril-like hair impaled old Wang's abdomen and hoisted him into the air. Another lodged in his mouth while the rest slithered through his body. By the time the creature released him, old Wang's body was a dried husk that crumpled to the ground. Around the factory chimneys, a colossal monster prowled the perimeter, its presence dominating the skyline. Inside one of those chimneys, a female worker knelt, pressed into the shadow to stay hidden. She covered her mouth to stifle her sobs, forcing herself into silence so the lurking monster would not detect her. Meanwhile, Ming-He rode the train while talking to his worried sister. He reassured her that he had enough money and had asked a classmate to help find a good place to live. A middle-aged woman waved down the train attendant making her rounds, asked for a glass of water, and inquired how much longer it would be until they reached Nandu. The attendant, Tianjin, replied that there was roughly an hour to go, and since it was the start of the school year, asked if the woman was taking her daughter to Nandu to attend school. Fang Nianrong, seated on the aisle beside her mother, smiled politely as her mother boasted to Tianjin that Fang had been accepted to the Superhuman Institute in Nandu and had earned the highest score in Lanyang City on the entrance exam. A nearby passenger who had overheard the exchange joined in with enthusiastic praise, calling her beautiful, remarkable, and exceptional. A boy sitting in front of them leaned over the back of his seat, offered a notebook and pen, and asked Fang to write him a message or autograph to bring him luck when he takes the Superhuman Institute exam. Ming-He found Fang Nianrong impressive. She had won admission through her own effort and ranked among the top scorers. He glanced over, and as Fang handed the written note back to the boy, he told the child to study hard. The train lurched to a sudden stop, and the woman beside Ming-He had to let go of her phone to steady herself and avoid colliding with the seat in front of her. However, her quick reflexes were not enough to prevent the baby in her arms from striking the seat. Fortunately, Ming-He reacted instantly, cupping his hands around the baby's head to protect it. Fang Nianrong noticed his swift response and acknowledged it with a relieved, grateful look. Passengers began to complain. A strange fog had appeared outside even though the sky had been clear just moments earlier. To make matters worse, all cellular signals had dropped. Ming-He stood, raised his phone, and scanned desperately for any reception. The child from earlier leaned to the window and reported seeing a strange figure moving outside. He told his mother he'd seen something enormous and odd, but she dismissed him and told him to stop inventing stories. Ming-He also peered out, but through the dense haze he could make out nothing beyond the fog. The PA system announced an unexpected incident on the train and instructed all passengers to remain seated for their safety, while staff inspected the situation. Curious about the incident, Ming-He rose to approach a train attendant and ask what was happening. He asked the attendant for details, but she curtly told him to return to his seat and avoid causing a disturbance. Ming-He produced his badge and explained he was a superhuman, requesting to be informed of any anomalies. The attendant, annoyed, told him to follow her to the front of the train so they could discuss it. Fang Nianrong, now standing behind Ming-He, spoke up. She's technically half superhuman and can step in when situations turn critical. The train operators reviewed the passenger information and grimly noted there wasn't a single superhuman on board, which made the situation look increasingly dire. As they entered the operator's room, the attendant announced with pride that she had located 2 potential superhumans. Maybe they could help resolve the problem. The operators lit up at the news and immediately pressed the pair for their grade and level of training. Their enthusiasm faded when Ming-He produced only a trainee badge and Fang Nianrong could only show enrollment papers. Kai Ming, the safety officer, warned them they couldn't be dispatched. Nobody knew how dangerous the outside could be. Ming-He countered that staying put in the middle of nowhere was worse. The longer they waited, the more hazardous it would become. At the very least, they needed to reach a spot with a signal to call for backup. The conductor agreed with Ming-He, ordering Kai Ming to accompany them and stressing that everyone must be extra careful when they went outside. Ming-He urged Fang Nianrong to stay on the train since she hadn't officially started her training and would be putting herself at unnecessary risk. She shot back that he was only a trainee too, so if he could go, she should be allowed as well. Ming-He didn't argue further. He told her to stay close, nodding there was something unsettling about the fog. Before they left, Ming-He asked the attendant by the door to lock it after they walked away and to open it only for their group. As soon as Ming-He, Fang Nianrong, and Kai Ming moved away, the attendant promptly locked the door. Kai Ming questioned why Ming-He felt the need to give instructions, pointing out that the attendants were professional and should know how to act without being told. Ming-He shrugged, saying he was only being cautious and wondered whether a heavy fog could force the train to stop. Kai-Ming replied that, unless the tracks themselves were damaged, fog alone wouldn't halt operations. He probed further, asking if the system might detect an object on the rails and automatically bring the train to a stop. Kai-Ming answered casually that, in his experience, such automatic stops were usually triggered by a wild animal that had breached the perimeter fences. Meanwhile, the attendant stood nervously by the door, alert and hoping that nothing would go wrong. Peering out the window, she spotted the silhouette of a girl and immediately moved to the door to let her in, worried about the danger outside. Her hand closed around the lock. She was about to open the door. Then she remembered Ming-He's instruction and let go of the lock at once. The girl was knocking on the train door while the attendant watched her from inside. A middle-aged, balding man with a heavy build noticed her and urged the attendant to let her in quickly, suggesting she might have come from another car. The attendant ignored him and peered out the window to get a clearer view of the situation. The man, idly picking at his teeth, insisted they should obviously open the door. The little girl outside looked alone and frightened. As he approached the door, the attendant blocked him, explaining that the superhuman had ordered them not to open the doors for anyone else and that the doors lock whenever the train stops, making it impossible for someone to get on or off. The man grew furious and created a scene, arguing that the girl could be a local who'd gotten lost and needed help. He criticized the attendant's coldness as the child began to cry. The attendant remained adamant, physically blocking the door and insisting they wait for the superhumans to return. The man shoved her aside and accused her of being selfish for refusing to let a crying person in. Since she wouldn't open the door, he declared he would. The attendant grabbed his shoulders in an attempt to restrain him and stop him from forcing the door. He pushed her away and yelled for her to back off. The attendant lost her footing and fell to the floor. He shamelessly claimed she was asking for it and branded her heartless. Smiling, he opened the door, reached out to the girl, and urged her to hurry inside. The instant his fingers brushed her hair, terror flashed across his face. By then it was already too late. Long, sinuous tentacles threaded through his clothing and wrapped around him, hauling him out of the train. He fought to hold on to the doors, but his grip failed and his hand slipped free. Visibly shaken by what she had just seen, the train attendant summoned all her strength to scramble to her feet and run. She stopped abruptly and turned toward the door as the thought of the other passengers rushed into her mind. Halfway through closing it, tentacles latched onto her legs and began dragging her out of the carriage. Trembling, tears welling in her eyes, she stood on the verge of sobbing as fear took hold. Her fear hardened into resolve. She decided to lock the door from the outside, sacrificing herself to protect the others. She cried out, eyes wide with terror, as the tentacles hauled her away into the darkness beyond the platform. 3 young passengers who had been playing cards waved down a passing attendant and asked how much longer the inspection would take. They were pressed for time. The attendant told them to wait a moment, then realized with alarm that Tansen, the guard at the door, was missing. She hurried to the door and scolded Tansen for being careless. The door wasn't even locked. No sooner had she locked the door than a tentacle lashed out, seizing the knob in an attempt to force it open. The tentacle recoiled at once when it registered that the door was firmly locked. Ming-He spotted enormous tracks in the dirt and immediately recognized them as the work of a calamity beast. He crouched to inspect the prints, imagining a massive creature that had left those marks and knocked rocks onto the track as it descended. He was surprised to have a signal, and even more so when Luo Lin's call came through. Relieved that Ming-He had answered, Luo Lin confirmed his position. He was near Zio Pai town in Nandu after he reported that something had happened. He explained he was on a train to Nandu that had stopped mid-journey due to an emergency. The fog was thick and signals were weak, so the crew couldn't reach headquarters. She immediately asked whether the train could still run. Ming-He confirmed the train itself appeared mechanically sound and should be able to continue once the obstacles on the track were cleared, but the crew hesitated to proceed because of the heavy fog and loss of communication. Luo Lin sighed with relief and urged Ming-He to leave the area at once. When he asked what had happened and whether he could help, she said they were still on the fog's edge. There was time to get out now, but lingering would only create more trouble. When Ming-He asked what the fog was, she snapped, irritated by his questions. With his current rank, he wouldn't survive inside it, so he had to prioritize the passengers' safety and withdraw immediately. Realizing the danger, Ming-He skidded down the slope without hesitation. He came to a stop beside Kaiming and Fang Nianrong. Kaiming erupted in complaints, accusing him of dumping all the grunt work on them and snarling, "You sneaky bastard." Ignoring Kai Ming's protest, Ming He ordered everyone to fall back at once. The command center had called and issued a direct retreat order. Fang Nianrong asked how he had a signal. He explained there was a faint reception higher in the mountains where he'd found the tracks of a massive calamity beast. Its descent must have triggered the rockfall, and she stared, unable to believe what he'd just said. Ming He insisted he had no reason to lie and urged them to hurry. Leaving now was the only way to keep everyone on the train safe. The thought hit her suddenly. Her mother was still on the train. Ming He told them to tell the conductor to start the train as soon as they reached the engine. At that moment, Kai Ming caught his foot on stance and volunteered to assist Ming He. The creature lashed out with its hair, sending it whipping toward both of them. Ming He managed to dodge the attack. Fang Nianrong wasn't so lucky. The hair struck her squarely in the abdomen. Alarmed, Ming He shouted for her to take cover, insisting he could handle the creature. Distracted, he didn't see a tentacle slither up behind him until it had already coiled around his waist. Fang Nianrong writhed on the ground in pain, yet between gasps she argued that Ming He was only a Starlight-ranked trainee and shouldn't be much stronger than she was. Ming He paid her no heed and demanded to know what purpose the monster hoped to serve by binding his body. The creature grinned and jerked Ming He closer, pulling him toward her. Instead of resisting, Ming He vaulted into the air and used the momentum of the creature's pull to propel himself. He told the monster the speed was perfect, then launched a lightning-fast flying punch that sent it stumbling backward. A powerful gust swept through the area. Fang Nianrong, struggling to shield herself from the blast, was taken aback by the punch's force and declared it wasn't the strength of a mere starlight rank. The monster doubled over in pain, clutching its abdomen. The monster's face twisted into a sinister grin as its green, tentacle-like hair darkened into jet black.